Before returning to the college entrance exam, I became popular in the scientific community. Hello again, dear adventurers of the multiverse. Thanks for joining us once more on this epic journey. Remember, this story is pure science fiction from our wild imagination, so don't go trying to summon dragons in your backyard. The rights of this amazing novel belong entirely to its original author. We are only the narrators. Do you want more adventures? Show some love to our YouTube channel with a subscription and a like, and if you want exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting for you with open arms. Chapter 1 Adventure. The summer sun blazed brightly, the afternoon air sweltering with an unbearable heat, so intense that even the cicadas had lost their energy to chirp. Wu Tong sat at her desk, the air conditioner at 25 degrees Celsius, blasting cool air through the room, yet she still felt unbearably restless. Given the Venn diagram for the universal set U equals R, the set M equals xz-1 x12, and N equals xx equals 2k, kz, how many elements does the set have in total, as indicated by the shaded area? How many? Wu Tong couldn't understand. How could a 28-year-old, a worker who had been away from the classroom for 10 years, possibly remember the problems from high school? Frowning, Wu Tong rubbed her brows in frustration. Who could have imagined that upon waking from a coma, she would be back to the summer of her first year in high school, a willful, ignorant, and unmotivated student? Her head ached, and the image of her father dying in a car accident and her mother in the emergency room, uncertain, resonated with her mind. Her heart felt like it was being pulled apart. The piercing pain made Wu Tong breathless. The pen in her hand suddenly broke on the desk, and Wu Tong looked at the test paper in front of her. It was not too late for everything. It was only 2009, she was only 16 years old, and it was still before the college entrance examination. Wu Tong tried hard to concentrate, and even half-heartedly thought, if only there was something that could help her concentrate and not be distracted. Just when she was about to complain about her lack of concentration, she started dreaming before she fell asleep. Suddenly, a cool and peaceful feeling slowly spread from the depths of her mind, making Wu Tong feel as light and energetic as a frozen watermelon in the dog days of summer. In just a short while, the problem that had been bothering Wu Tong just now was vaguely grasped from her limited knowledge base, and she had some ideas. It seemed that she could start with the intersection operation of the two sets M and N. Was this a pie in the sky? Or was it just her illusion? If it was an illusion, the solution that emerged in her mind wasn't a figment of her imagination. It was knowledge she couldn't possibly remember now. The teacher had taught her back then, but she hadn't paid close attention. Now, with her undivided attention, she dug deep into the knowledge she'd heard so easily, connecting it all together to form a solution. To put it simply, this was a flash of inspiration. If possible, Wu Tong certainly hoped it was real, not a one-time event. To verify this, Wu Tong once again focused on the problem. A sudden surge of clarity washed over her mind, and all distracting thoughts vanished, leaving only the focused, thorough solution. Following her earlier thought, she began to write. The shaded area in the diagram represents the set M and N. M equals xr-1 x12, equals xr0 x3, and N equals xx equals 2k, kz, Mn equals 0, 2. Therefore, the shaded area has a total of 2 elements. Writing with such gusto, the answer emerged from her pen. Wu Tong truly experienced the joy of solving problems. If learning were this comfortable, studying all the time would be a joyful enjoyment, not an anxious torture. Writing beautifully, this is the desire of so many people. The sudden encounter made Wu Tong extremely surprised, but also curious and puzzled. Where did this opportunity come from? Remembering that the initial source of that magical feeling came from the depths of her mind, Wu Tong could not help but close her eyes and calm her mind, concentrating her thoughts and carefully feeling the depths of her mind. Her heart gradually calmed down, and suddenly, Wu Tong felt that her consciousness suddenly came to a magical place. Her thoughts were clear, and a wave of enlightenment surged in her heart. This was the deepest part of her sea of consciousness. Within it, a slightly damaged black jade steel stood quietly. Even though it was damaged, the jade steel still shone with brilliance and was moist and crystal clear. Wu Tong's consciousness tentatively approached the jade steel, enveloped by its calm, mountain-like aura. A gentle warmth flowed through her heart, and all events, past and future, naturally surfaced before her. A remarkable object, the Enlightenment Stone, naturally formed into steel, possessed a miraculous power of understanding the ultimate truths of heaven and earth. However, time and the vicissitudes of life have shattered the Enlightenment Stone, leaving only its rudimentary ability to calm the mind and aid in deciphering errors and omissions. It now teeters on the brink of extinction. Today, revitalized by the intertwining energies of time and space, Wu Tong, the owner of the steel, unexpectedly awakened past life memories, mingling with the future and glimpsing a glimpse of the future. But for Wu Tong, these modest abilities are already extremely useful aids. To have them is a blessing. She has no desire for instant celestial enlightenment. The entire tragedy began with her deliberate neglect of study after this summer vacation. Now, with a wake-up call of past life memories and the aid of the Enlightenment Stone, the first step to changing her destiny is to study diligently. Studying steadily, step by step, acquiring more knowledge, becoming the pride of her parents, becoming a useful person, and taking control of her own life. This is the path that her parents find most satisfying, and it's also the path that will best develop her. In her previous life, she was tired of repetitive work and had no real understanding of the world. While she knew that technology would advance by leaps and bounds in the future, she didn't understand the underlying principles. She knew that housing prices in big cities would continue to rise, but she and her family didn't have the money to buy one. Knowing someone would win the lottery, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions, so what? Her memory didn't encompass lottery numbers. Her family, like most people, lived in a small, ordinary town in Xinjiang County, Shiansong City, in the Central Plains. Her father, Wu Jingzhong, was a civil servant working in the county agricultural bureau, and her mother, Jin Yu, was an elementary school teacher, teaching mathematics. While her family wasn't wealthy, they could still provide for their basic needs. They didn't pursue extravagance, and their financial situation wasn't severe, so she didn't need to rush out to earn money. Books hold golden houses, diligent study can lead to wealth. In a past life, she seemed to have heard that a mathematician who solved a mathematical conjecture was rewarded with $1 million. She didn't know her limits, but given her personality, a quiet personality and a focus on research suited her best. Moreover, with the aid of the Enlightenment Stone, perhaps she could achieve such glory. Diligent study, the acquisition of knowledge, and the comprehension of that knowledge would also nourish the Enlightenment Stone, nourishing and repairing it. They complemented each other, complementing and fulfilling each other. Besides its source, the Enlightenment Stone also gifted Wu Tong a strengthening technique, which she named the Morning Sun Purple Key Method. Using her own body as a medium, she would absorb the purple energy of the rising sun each day, combining it with a special breathing technique to infuse it into her limbs and bones, nourishing every part of her body. While it wouldn't have miraculous effects that could alter her destiny, it would strengthen her muscles and bones, enhance her physique, and certainly protect her from serious illnesses. Unfortunately, absorbing the morning glow purple energy was only suitable for her own use, as it was based on the Enlightenment Stone's coexistence with her. As for that breathing method, she researched and simplified it, which she could teach her parents, along with gentle exercises, to strengthen their bodies. With a healthy constitution, illness would naturally be less of a problem. They should at least strive for a long life of over 100 years, without suffering from any illness. Chapter 2 Review. Having made up her mind, Wu Tong no longer forced herself to use her shaky foundation. She racked her brains, finally relying on an unexpected spark of inspiration to solve the problems. The difficulty stemmed from her weak foundation. Just as towering buildings rise from the ground, what she needed most was to first establish a solid foundation. Only with a solid foundation would she have the confidence to go further on the path of learning. Learning never ends. Pulling out her first-year high school math textbook, Wu Tong prepared to begin with math and carefully review the entire first-year science curriculum. Concentrating her mind, her consciousness touched the Enlightenment Stone, and the tranquility and concentration aid activated again. Wu Tong instantly entered a state of deep learning. In this state of deep learning, all external distractions were eliminated. Wu Tong's attention, comprehension, and memory were infinitely focused and amplified. With extreme tranquility and no distractions, she focused solely on the textbook, and her learning efficiency naturally increased manifold. While ideally, a person's learning ability is 100%, in reality, even when diligently studying, due to various distractions, both conscious and unconscious, they only reach 40% to 50%. Even if they're not diligent, achieving 20% to 30% is still considered a decent learning efficiency, often due to natural talent. Now, Wu Tong's learning efficiency is like a fully powered airplane, experiencing a near 200% to 300% boost. Naturally, her learning gains and progress are incomparable. The bits of knowledge the teacher once covered in class, which she'd either forgotten or memorized by accident, now emerge from the depths of her consciousness, like notes, one by one, clearly and completely, as she reads through the pages. Connected with the new insights gained from her current deep learning state, mathematical formulas that once vexed her, those complex and incomprehensible points, now become crystal clear to her. She loses herself in the lines of derivations and mathematical language, completely grasping and understanding the knowledge that once seemed cumbersome. She went from slowly understanding and struggling to master certain points to absorbing them like a dry seedling soaking up water, feeling as if she were consuming knowledge. With her left hand, she flipped through the book, meticulously reviewing each key point and mathematical formula. With her right hand, she wrote down the key points of each chapter. As the saying goes, a good memory is not as good as a bad pen. Writing down key points in her understanding, and practicing exercises, further deepened her learning. After mastering a chapter's key points and mathematical formulas, she would put them into practice, using the after-class exercises to verify her understanding. Having truly mastered the mathematical formulas, she truly experienced the smooth and exhilarating nature of math problems. When working through the exercises, she almost instinctively extracted the key points after reading the questions, then fluently and rigorously applied the knowledge she had mastered. She never encountered any particularly demanding parts, and her flow was incredible. This feeling of comfort was addictive. Wu Tong's eyes lit up with surprise, and she was even more motivated to continue studying. With this kind of support, she cherished every minute of her study time. Wasting time is wasting life. Time slipped by quietly, and before he knew it, the sun had already set, tinging the sky with twilight. At that moment, Wu Tong's door was knocked and opened from the outside. Wu Jingzhong, smiling, pushed the door open and greeted him. He was taking the day off at home. Tong, take a break, have some watermelon, and then, Dad, seeing his father's young, familiar face again, Wu Tong's eyes instantly filled with tears. She suddenly stood up, rushed into Wu Jingzhong's arms, and hugged his waist tightly, tears streaming down her face. Dad is okay, Dad is fine, everything is fine. Hey, what's wrong? Are you scared by your screaming? Tong, let's not cry, don't be afraid. Wu Jingzhong was at a loss what to do after his daughter cried. He patted his daughter's back to comfort her emotions, and quickly shouted, Wife, come quickly, see Tong, what's wrong? What's wrong with your daughter? Jinyu came out of the kitchen with a plate of sliced watermelon. She put the watermelon on the coffee table in the living room, lifted up her apron to wipe her hands, and walked over. What's going on? You're a big kid now, always playful, not studying hard, and I say a few words to you, and you complain to your dad. Jinyu frowned. It's all because of you. Now you don't have much ability, but you have a bad temper. Wu Tong, let me tell you, as a teacher, Jinyu hated slacking in her studies and habitually preaching. She was about to offer her daughter some words, urging her to correct her attitude and let her father off her guard, when Wu Tong released her embrace and flung herself back into her arms, instantly choking her words. She had always been very strict with her daughter's upbringing, using more strictness than control. As a result, she had grown closer to her husband. Wu Tong had become particularly rebellious in recent years, entering adolescence and becoming impatient with instruction. This had led to more arguments between mother and daughter, and a rare closeness. Mom, Wu Tong sobbed, her emotions uncontrollable. She no longer complained about her mother's excessive control. Mom, you have to control me. You have to control me all the time. I have to be good, always control her. The sun had risen from the west today? Wu Jingzhong and Jinyu exchanged a bewildered glance. Was she possessed? Okay, she's that old, and she still cries like a cat. Aren't you ashamed? After all, she is your daughter's biological mother. No matter how hard her words are, Jinyu's heart is still soft towards your daughter. She patted her daughter's back gently to comfort her, pulled her daughter to sit on the sofa in the living room, took the wet towel that her wife handed to her attentively, wiped her daughter's face, and then handed her half of the watermelon that was not cut open with a spoon inserted. Here, eat the watermelon. Your daddy's watching it today and didn't cut it open. She and the child's father are used to eating watermelons and cutting them open. Now that her daughter is older, she likes to hold a watermelon and eat it with a spoon. She has also made many complaints about this. Your mother left it uncut for you on purpose, Wu Jingzhong added helplessly. It is obvious that his wife loves their daughter just as much, but he has to add such a hard-mouthed sentence. Mom, if you love me, you should say it boldly. How can I know if you don't say it? You can't be shy about this. Wu Tong stopped her breakdown as if she were seeing her father again after a lifetime, and boldly suggested playfully. She turned the spoon, scooped out a piece of the sweetest melon core and put it into her mother's mouth, and then scooped a piece for her father without favoritism. At this age, she was used to her parents' unconditional favoritism. On the contrary, because of some superficial discipline, she had more and more conflicts with her parents. She was unruly and willful, ignoring the love they received day after day. It was really wrong. Chapter 3 Purple Key. Wu Tong reflected that her parents' love for her was selfless and unrequited, but that didn't mean she was selfish and only caring about taking. She should be considerate and filial. Why are you being so weird? Just eat yours honestly. This whole plate is not enough for your father and me. Despite her stubborn retort, Jin Yu finally swallowed the exceptionally sweet melon. The family happily ate the watermelon, assuming Wu Tong was startled. Unconcerned, the couple didn't question the reason. Feeling incredibly close to her daughter, Teacher Jin even had Wu Jingzhong buy a pound of braised beef in clear sauce, her daughter's favorite, for her evening noodles. Normally, Teacher Jin rarely allowed Wu Tong to eat out, believing it was unhygienic and unhealthy. This braised pork shop had been a long-standing institution, renowned for its excellent taste and clean, hygienic preparation. It was one of the few places Teacher Jin recognized. The summer weather is hot, and one has no appetite and is impatient to eat hot food. Refreshing cold noodles are the Wu family's daily dinner. After giving instructions to her father and pestering her mother, Wu Tong returned to her room after dinner, washing up, and watching the news broadcast that her parents would never miss. She then began a new round of study. It was already August, and there was less than a month left before school started. Summer vacation was over, and she would be entering her second year of high school. At the end of her first year of high school, they had already divided their majors into arts and science, and she chose science. This choice was more due to the indoctrination and decisive requirements of Teacher Jin and Comrade Wu from childhood to university, who had taught her to be good at math, physics, and chemistry and not be afraid of traveling the world. She even got angry with her parents about the division of arts and science. It wasn't that she didn't like science, it was just pure rebelliousness. In one word, it was unreasonable and wrong. The Zhangyin Province College entrance exam was a national exam, covering 6 science subjects: Chinese, math, English, physics, chemistry, and biology. Her foundation wasn't solid, and it wasn't just math. She was also half-baked in Chinese, English, physics, chemistry, and biology. She urgently needed to relearn and rebuild her foundation. After relearning her freshman year, with the added convenience of having the opportunity, she could also schedule self-study for sophomore and junior year, or even more advanced material. There was no time to waste. No matter how good her support was, she still had to put her all into her studies to acquire knowledge, otherwise, it would be in vain. Before she knew it, Wu Tong had turned to the last page of her first-year math course, marking her completion. She glanced outside, seeing silence and darkness. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of the pink rabbit alarm clock on the corner of her desk. It was already 11:56 p.m., with 4 minutes to midnight. She had been studying for about 4 hours. Deep in her concentration, so focused on her studies, she barely noticed a passage of time. Replenished with accomplishments, Wu Tong stretched, loosening her muscles, stiffened by the long hours of studying. It was time to rest. Normally, she would have fallen asleep at this time. The body is the capital of revolution, so a good rest is necessary. After estimating the time when the sun would rise, Wu Tong set the alarm for 5 o'clock, pulled down the ponytail tied at the back of her head, turned to the bed and lay down to sleep. It was the age of growth, and coupled with the exhaustion of studying, Wu Tong fell asleep almost as soon as she touched the pillow. The next day, the alarm rang. Wu Tong raised her hand to turn it off, and then touched her forehead, which was covered with sweat. There's a kind of love called mom thinks you are cold. Teacher Jin believes that using the air conditioner for a long time is not good for health. She is worried that Wu Tong will catch a cold if she uses the air conditioner too much, So she usually turns off the air conditioner in Wu Tong's room quietly in the middle of the night. Wu Tong often wakes up because of the heat, and she even had a protest argument with teacher Jin. However, when it comes to issues related to Wu Tong's health and study, teacher Jin never gives in. Naturally, the protest is ineffective and the communication is unsuccessful. After wiping the sweat from his forehead, Wu Tong changed into a summer sports short-sleeved shirt and thin trousers that were easy to move around in. He quietly opened the door, picked up the mat he had found, and went up to the top floor. They lived in the staff quarters of the County Agricultural Bureau, which had a two-family layout with one elevator and 7 floors in total. The 2-bedroom, 1 living room house was just enough for a family. The top floor was directly accessible, which made it convenient for residents to dry their quilts and enjoy the cool in the summer. It was early in the morning and everyone was still asleep. The top floor was quiet and deserted, which was just convenient for Wu Tong to move around. He found an open space to spread out the mat, and sat cross-legged facing the rising sun in the east. He timed it just right. A blush appeared on the sky, dyeing half of the fish belly white-red. The sun's rosy edge slowly emerged, its all-encompassing light radiating through the clouds. Wu Tong lowered her eyes and followed the technique she had learned yesterday. With each breath, she absorbed a wisp of the morning sun's purple energy. This transformed into a warm, yet not cold, current that entered her mouth and nose, passed through the tower, and then spread to her limbs and bones, nourishing every part of her body. When the sun completely broke through the horizon, slowly climbing higher, and the sky brightened, Wu Tong ceased practicing the technique. The morning sun purple energy technique draws on the purple energy of the rising sun. The essence of the sun after full rise is beyond Wu Tong's ability to absorb now. The enlightenment steel and Wu Tong coexisted in harmony, drawing on the natural world of heaven and earth. This technique, derived from this principle, emphasizes balance and peace, nourishing the vital energy and replenishing the spirit. Wu Tong's vital energy and spirit were thriving, and only now could she acknowledge the enlightenment steel, which was in tune with her, be nourished. Otherwise, continuously exceeding its supply would only hasten its demise. After finishing the exercises, Wu Tong did a set of Tai Chi to stretch her muscles. In the memory she'd glimpsed yesterday, she'd learned Tai Chi from her cousin, who'd taken it as a physical education elective in college. Since she was also interested in traditional culture, she'd practiced the techniques from memory, occasionally doing them. She practiced from memory, feeling a bit awkward at first, as her memory and body didn't align, but as the movements progressed, she transitioned from unfamiliar to proficient in the same time it took to complete a single routine. After completing the exercises and stretching her muscles with Tai Chi, Wu Tong felt her mind become remarkably clear and her spirits soar. The grogginess she'd usually felt after waking up, a sign of not getting enough sleep, had completely vanished. After her morning exercise, Wu Tong relaxed her movements again and went home to her room. After turning on the air conditioner and adjusting the temperature, she pulled out her English textbook and began memorizing the last few words. Her English test scores, which were out of 150, had mostly hovered around 110-20, though it wasn't uncommon for her to score below 100 on the more difficult questions. It's not excellent, and there's still a lot of room for improvement in vocabulary and grammar. Wu Tong's goal for today's morning reading is to review and memorize half or all of the English words in the compulsory first course. Chapter 4 Objectives. Tong, it's getting late. I warmed up some milk for you. Drink it and go to bed. At 10 o'clock that evening, Jinyu knocked on her daughter's door and placed a milk on her desk. She looked at her daughter, a math textbook open in one hand and a mathematical derivation scribbled in the other. She was filled with both delight and curiosity. She was delighted by her daughter's remarkable self-discipline over the past 2 days. She didn't need to be urged to study, and she was incredibly dedicated. Except for eating and going to the bathroom, she barely left her room. She had considered whether she was secretly playing games or reading novels in her room, but after a few surprise inspections or when she brought her something, her daughter's focus on her studies was unprecedented, undistracted by distractions. She studied from morning till midnight, her work practically non-stop. A thick stack of densely written draft paper formed on the corner of the desk, and she was truly astonished. Mom, I'll drink it in a minute. Wu Tong continued working on the problem. She'd been revisiting her first-year math class these past 2 days, currently on the final chapter of her first-year math course, and was nearing the end. Deeply absorbed in her studies, Wu Tong had practically ignored any non-threatening external influences. She casually replied, her full attention still focused on the calculations at hand. Take your time, then. Go to bed early when you're done, and don't forget to drink your milk. Mom's out first, Jinyu said cheerfully and concernedly. She didn't care when her daughter didn't respond, and quietly left Wu Tong's room. Tong, still studying, Wu Jingzhong, reclining on the sofa reading the newspaper, saw his wife emerge from their daughter's room. He put down his newspaper, stood up, and walked towards their bedroom. While their daughter was studying, they usually watched TV on mute or read printed books. Did your daughter take the wrong medicine these past few days? Jinyu seemed a little unaccustomed to suddenly not having to urge her daughter to study. It can't be that our daughter has finally come to her senses and fallen in love with studying. Wu Jingzhong was unhappy with this statement. He had such a precious daughter, so of course he had nothing but the best in his eyes. Tong likes studying, isn't that a good thing? He had previously been worried when his daughter showed signs of rebellion and wasn't paying attention to her studies. They were experienced people, and they understood the importance of studying. The college entrance examination was the fairest ladder to advancement for ordinary people like them, without social status or wealth to squander. He had escaped from a family that toiled in the fields because of his hard work. He was admitted to university, assigned to a company after graduation, married a good wife, and after 20 years of diligent work, he now had a stable life with no worries about food and clothing. Now that his daughter was studying hard, he was delighted. Tong, you've worked so hard these days. I'm going to the countryside tomorrow. I'll buy 2 free-range chickens and you can stew them for Tong to nourish her, so I'm the stepmother? And you're the real father? Jinyu glanced at her husband with displeasure. You're the only one who knows how to be a good person. Jinyu had a stubborn personality. Even as a teacher. She realized now that she was so used to making arrangements when it came to the mother-daughter relationship that she hadn't quite grasped the right balance. No. Sailing the sea depends on a helmsman. You're our family's helmsman, the anchor. We can't live without you. It's not that my daughter is grown up and has a strong sense of pride. As a teacher, you know adolescents best. Tong is obedient, so just say less about her. Having been tempered by work, Comrade Wu still had some ability to engage in theoretical discussions. I'm afraid it's just a flash in the pan, but it won't last. Let's see more. Tong's willingness to learn is a good thing. Parents, no matter how hard or difficult the journey, want their children to have a bright future. Raising a child for 100 years is a constant worry for 99. With just one child, they might worry about her until their last breath. It was another day, and Wu Tong followed her daily routine, rising early to practice exercises, pushing hands, and boxing to nourish her body, followed by morning reading. In a state of deep learning, she spent 2 mornings memorizing the English vocabulary for her first-year high school courses, 1st through 4th. Today, she began by reading through the short passages in the textbook, focusing on the grammar. With her vocabulary expanded, rereading the texts will naturally improve her fluency. Later, she thinks she can expand her memorization of dictionary words, going beyond the textbook. She also plans to review the key Chinese language sections tomorrow. This is especially true for the classical Chinese texts and interpretations of ancient poetry that had previously troubled her. These are areas where her grasp is weak and needs further study. Both Chinese and English are core subjects, and they are equally important, with morning study sessions for each subject repeated daily. Yesterday, she finished reviewing first-year high school math, 1st through 4th, thoroughly mastering the formulas. After breakfast, Wu Tong took out the test paper she had struggled with before. This time, Wu Tong finally experienced what it meant to write with divine inspiration. Questions that had previously racked her brains were now effortless and easy to handle. Almost as soon as she finished reading the questions, she already had the solution in mind. With a little deduction and calculation, she quickly churned out the answer. The feeling of accomplishment was unparalleled. Their summer vacation began on July 5th, and school started on September 1st, a span of almost 2 months. During the break, each subject's teachers would say the homework wasn't much, just 1 test every 2 days, with an hour or 2 of review time each day to prevent them from completely letting themselves go. But multiply that workload by 6 subjects, and the workload became enormous. Wu Tong had a total of 30 math tests. She had procrastinated over the previous month, and despite Teacher Jin's strict supervision, she had only managed 5 or 6. The rest, Planned for the start of the semester, she would frantically churn through homework by exchanging information with classmates. But now, there was no need to cheat or copy homework. She worked through each test in half an hour, unstoppable, finishing the summer math practice papers she had previously procrastinated on and hadn't started on. She also redid the 5 or 6 she'd managed to finish, checking her calculations and correcting any errors. Before, when she was doing the test papers, she was racking her brains and had no idea where to start. But now, she is in a state where the answer appears in her mind wherever she looks. The speed of her handwriting can't keep up with the extension of her thinking. After writing all day, her hand holding the pen is tired and achy. Such a smooth process makes her want to do 10 or 8 more test papers. She doesn't have the next math textbook now. In addition, there are 6 subjects in the college entrance examination, which requires comprehensive improvement. No subject can be lagging behind. With a math review coming to an end, Wu Tong has to make arrangements to review the physics, chemistry and biology of the first year of high school, which she didn't learn very well and was just around the passing line. Chapter 5 Parental Love. For now, regardless of whether China's score-focused education model has been criticized domestically and internationally, scores remain the lifeblood of these students. The criterion for academic performance remains high scores. The golden rule for admission to a top university is still selective admission. After retaking math, Wu Tong was filled with knowledge and absorbed in the exercises, a state of deep concentration that made her even more absorbed in the joy of learning, almost oblivious to the passage of time. The Enlightenment Stone provided Wu Tong with absolute focus and deep learning, while morning exercises provided her with abundant energy and vitality. These two forces worked in tandem. Wu Tong combined her own understanding with her memory of the teacher's explanations and analysis, and also consulted with the guidance of renowned teachers in her tutoring books. Finally, she practiced various real-life practice tests to solidify her knowledge, maintaining a 3-day review schedule for each subject. Wu Tong was a day student, so during summer vacation, she brought all the books from the classroom with her, which facilitated her retake plan. Besides textbooks, her largest collection of materials was undoubtedly various supplementary materials. Wu Jingzhong and Jin Yu prioritized Wu Tong's studies and always supported her book purchases. Wu Tong had previously purchased countless supplementary materials, including tutorials from renowned teachers, reference books, practice exams, and practice tests. However, aside from the required homework assignments, which she perfunctorily handled, she only touched a few pages, leaving the rest blank. Wu Tong no longer cared to complain about her previous, inappropriate behavior, and regretted it. She was starting to change from now on. Instead of complaining, she would instead practice more exercises and make the most of her supplementary materials. As the month drew to a close and the school term began, Wu Tong achieved her initial goal of completing all her retakes in an orderly manner. With the help of the Enlightenment Stone, Wu Tong truly experienced the joy of learning. The ever-increasing piles of retake textbooks, the ever-growing piles of draft paper, and the densely written summer exams and supplementary materials all bore witness to her hard work. Wu Tong, a habitual procrastinator, this time broke free from his sluggish, half-hearted attitude and truly demonstrated consistent self-discipline. The unbearable grief he would remember in the future would serve as a wake-up call for Wu Tong. He had reviewed all the textbook points, completed all the summer homework, and reviewed all the exercises in his tutoring book. 20 days had passed in a flash, and Wu Tong felt a surge of accomplishment as he looked at his desk piled high with neatly arranged textbooks by subject, filled with practice exams from his tutoring book, and thick stacks of draft paper. At 6 in the afternoon, Wu Jingzhong strolled home from work. They lived in the company's staff compound, and the commute from his home to work was no more than 2 kilometers. For 20 years, he had been accustomed to walking to and from get off work, as long as he wasn't working in the countryside. Teacher Jin's elementary school wasn't far away, just across the street. Wu Tong attended elementary school for 5 years under her mother's watch. She was the last class to attend a 5-year elementary school before the 6-year system was changed. Wu Jinggai climbed the 4th-floor apartment quietly, holding the door open and shut with his hand, careful and almost silent. He was more cautious than a thief, afraid to disturb his daughter's studies. The old-fashioned family building, after years of living there, wasn't very soundproof. Jin Yu leaned out of the kitchen and watched her husband's actions with a smile. Even though she had been doing the same thing almost every time she entered and left the house recently, And even though they knew, and had witnessed, Wu Tong's concentration wasn't really necessary, seeing her child's intense study made them unable to help but slow down their movements, fearing it would disturb her studies. Tong hasn't come out to rest yet. No, you know how frantic your daughter has been these days. Jinyu didn't know whether to be relieved or distressed. Before, her daughter's lack of focus had made her anxious and irritated. Now, with her overly motivated studies, they were worried for the first time about her overcommitment. Studying all day is exhausting. Will it wear you out? Wu Jingzhong worried. They wanted their child to study hard and apply themselves, but not in a frenzied state. How about we take Tong out for a walk tomorrow? Tong's still growing, and school's almost starting. We need to buy her some clothes, and then go see the old folks. Okay, that's perfect. The girl's picky right now. She doesn't like any of the clothes I buy. Let her choose for herself. It seems like ever since the child entered puberty and gained her own sense of self, she's been acting up. The couple agreed and brought up the topic at the dinner table. Tong, studying isn't something you can rush. Why don't you take a break? School's about to start. Go buy some things and visit your grandparents. Wu Jingzhong calculated the time. This whole process would take at least 3 or 4 days, just enough to cover the entire month until school starts. Wu Tong was still somewhat absorbed in the physics problem she'd just done before dinner. It was quite an interesting one, with quite a few tricks. Friction, power, the surface data was all over the place, with a bewildering array of twists and turns that could easily have led one astray. In the past, she'd definitely been the one to fall into the trap, but this time, faced with a more challenging problem, Wu Tong, on the other hand, was clear-eyed and calm, her thoughts clear, her reactions swift, and she mastered it in one fell swoop. It was truly remarkable. Good, Wu Tong replied, a beat late. She had completed her initial review and could use a break to reward herself. Chapter 6 Jin Family. Let's go see Grandpa and Grandma first. She could pick any time to shop, and since tomorrow was her weekend off, she might as well take advantage of her dad's break and go to his. She missed the old people, but she'd been so engrossed in her studies these past few days that she hadn't made it this month. Wu Jingzhong and Jinyu were both office workers with regular hours, so their only visits to their parents' home were weekends and holidays. Wu Tong had been raised at his grandmother's house since he was a child. After Wu Tong was born, Mrs. Wu excused herself, saying she was helping her eldest son raise his grandson and couldn't leave, so she refused to let him take care of him. It's a thoughtful gesture for the elderly to help take care of a child, but if they didn't, the couple couldn't complain, right? Wu Jingzhong and Jinyu had to support their family, so they couldn't afford to give up their jobs to stay home and raise the child. Jinyu's mother had helped take care of her during her confinement period. After the confinement period ended, the couple discussed and considered it, and decided to scrape together some money and hire a nanny to watch the child while they were at work. Upon learning of this, grandfather Jin Yongqing scolded his daughter and son-in-law for their mischief, treating them like outsiders. He and his wife took Wu Tong, just 1 month old, back to the Jin family to take care of her. While his in-laws didn't care about their granddaughter, they did. They cared for her until she finished kindergarten and started elementary school, attending the same school as Jinyu. He recalled a memory of her struggling to survive away from home after she skipped school and went to work. Her grandparents, worried about her struggles, secretly sent her money and urged her to take care of herself. The Jin family lived in the southeast of the county town, a 3-story building built on their own old house with land sold by a neighbor. They had lived there for 10 years. With courtyards in front and back, it was a comfortable place. Jin Yongqing was impatient with the residential complex, feeling it lacked the vibrant atmosphere of this place, where he was surrounded by old neighbors. The old couple were veterans of the county machinery factory, a true symbol of their pedigree in that special era. Jin Yongqing, a 7th-level fitter, was a renowned master craftsman at the factory, commanding a commanding presence wherever he went. Unfortunately, most state-owned factories subsequently failed, and they were caught up in the wave of layoffs. Jin Yongqing, a decisive man and a believer in the promise of success, decided to use his severance pay for his family of 4 to open a car repair shop. Both Jin and his son possessed skills and were generous individuals. With the current economic situation improving, the shop, which once served as a means of subsistence, has now become a 4-room repair center, a relatively comfortable existence in the county town. In recent years, old man Jin has retired, leaving the family business to his son, Jin Yuan. Jin Yuan is in his prime and is considering further expansion into the auto dealership market. The eldest of the Jin siblings, teacher Jin Yujin, was admitted to Zhangjiu Normal University, where he received a government subsidy and was guaranteed a teaching position after graduation at the county primary school. He has a younger brother, Jin Yuan, who is 2 years younger than Wu Tong. Jin Yuan married young and has only one son, Jin Xin, Wu Tong's cousin, who is actually 2 years older. This was because teacher Jin married late after attending normal school. Even if their marriage and childbearing went smoothly, Wu Tong was still a step behind. Grandpa, when Wu Tong and his family of 3 arrived at the Jin residence, Jin Yongqing was sitting at the stone table in the courtyard, leisurely sipping tea from his cup. Overhead, the grape trellis, half hidden by its shimmering green leaves, held a delicate cluster of purple grapes, looking both vibrant and tempting. The lush vine, planted after the house was built, was meticulously tended by old man Jin. It was now in peak fruit season. Wu Tong had previously tasted the grapes Grandpa had sent her. They were incredibly sweet. "Oh, my precious granddaughter is here. Grandpa just cut some grapes for you and washed them. Come and have some." Upon seeing the family of 3 enter, Jin Yongqing beamed. He put down his cup of tea, stood up, and greeted his precious granddaughter. Yes, in the Jin family, Wu Tong has always been treated as the eldest granddaughter. In the words of old man Jin, there are only these 2 children in the family, and there are no outsiders in our family. He sneered at the words granddaughter and nephew. "Grandpa, I miss you." "Where is my grandma?" Wu Tong smiled and walked forward, got close to the old man, and hugged his grandfather's arm. "Really miss you? I don't think so, you little heartless boy. You haven't come to see Grandpa for a month." Old man Jin pretended to be unbelieving. In the past summer vacation, this child would stay here for most of the summer vacation, and the rest of the time she would go back and forth. This summer vacation, she hasn't shown up for a month. If he hadn't asked his daughter and found out that the child was motivated and had been studying, he would have been unable to sit still and went to pick up his granddaughter in person. "Your grandma's in the house. It's hot outside. Let's go inside, Grandpa. I'm just trying to make up for it. I wasn't paying attention before, and I fell behind in my studies. I couldn't even do the exercises, so I put in the extra effort to catch up on what I'd missed. I'll be a sophomore at the start of the school year, and if I don't work harder, I'll fall behind." Wu Tong spoke frankly, not trying to justify his earlier mischief. "My eldest granddaughter, you've worked hard studying. Grandpa caught a big silver carp this morning and is raising them in the backyard. I'm going to make you your favorite white fish to nourish you." Old man Jin was a man of open-mindedness and understanding. He never discouraged his children from pursuing their dreams, treating them all equally. When his eldest daughter got into college, he was incredibly proud. But when his youngest son failed, he pushed him through high school. Since he didn't have the academic ability, he took him with him to learn a trade, keeping him from wandering around and giving him a skill to support the family. "My Miss Tong finally remembered that you have an uncle waiting for you, waiting so long that the flowers are almost wilting." Hearing the noise, Jin Yuan emerged from the living room, grinning. Wu Jingzhong had given them a heads up that he was coming, and Jin Yuan had deliberately skipped the shop and waited at home. He was a typical northern man, tall and broad. Having started out as a car mechanic and experienced a lot over the years, his physique looking exceptionally strong. Back in the 1980s, he had also caught up with the reform and opening up, hoping to catch up with the times and become a trendsetter. Unfortunately, his father's strict control and constant beatings extinguished his spark before he could even get a chance to rise. However, he still retained his playful and cheerful personality, as evidenced by his outfit today. A pink polo shirt, off-white casual pants, and sporty sneakers, his outfit was truly striking, especially in a small, underdeveloped county like theirs. He was sure to turn heads. "Uncle, no one's tying your feet to stop you from visiting me." Wu Tong, holding onto her grandfather's arm, felt bolder with support. She wrinkled her nose and glared at her unruly uncle. She and Jin Yuan were used to being so frivolous. "Oh my. My heart aches. Autumn's chill is about to set in, and my little cotton padded jacket is leaking even before I put it on." Jin Yuan was a bit of a show-off, and Wu Tong's words immediately piqued his interest, imitating the shrewdness of Zai Shi holding her heart. The burly man's forced demeanor was almost eye-popping. Chapter 7 Plan. A slap landed on Jin Yuan's back, the sound resonating, clearly uncontrollable. The one who struck him was none other than Grandma Jin, who swiftly emerged from the house. The old woman wore her hair in an old-fashioned bun, wrapped in a hairnet, even her sideburns neatly pinned with black clips. It was incomprehensible how she and old Jin, who were not known for laughter and playfulness, could have raised such an unruly son. Of course he is. Aren't you afraid of scaring Tong, aunt-in-law Su Mi-feng, who emerged with her mother-in-law, approached and embraced Wu Tong affectionately, ushering everyone in, laughing and teasing her husband. She was a dashing woman, tall and strong, looking very healthy. Wu Tong had grown up in their home, and they treated her like their own daughter, even doting on her because she was a girl. He, Jin Yuan, wasn't upset. Was being hit by his own mother considered a beating? Of course not. It was a sign of his mother's love, wasn't it? Being ridiculed by his wife, that's because his wife has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. She loves him. Just because his wife can raise her niece as her own daughter, he, Jin Yuan, flatters her like the queen. The family chatted and laughed as they entered the living room. Wu Tong was taken to sit next to the old man. The 4 members of the Jin family surrounded them and fed them all kinds of things. There was a special portion of watermelon, cantaloupe, and peach, cut into small pieces, accompanied by candied red beans and coconut fruit. Su Mi-feng was peeling the washed grapes and opening the large fruit yogurt. Wu Tong likes to eat fruit with yogurt, and the Jin family knows this little hobby very well. At this moment, the ingredients are all ready, just waiting for Wu Tong to add as he likes. If it weren't for the coldness that is harmful to the body and the strict control of the family, Wu Tong actually prefers to eat the newly popular fried yogurt. With various small ingredients, it has a rich taste and is cool and pleasant. It is a great summer heat reliever. After the family had a moment of comfort, Wu Tong asked Jin Zin, "Will my brother be home at noon?" Jin Zin was entering his 3rd year of high school this year, a crucial year for him. School had already started early in August for makeup classes, a last-ditch effort. Yes, your brother's still a day student this year, so he'll be home both at noon and in the evening. This was a crucial year, and whether it was food or accommodation, home was still the comfort. Do you need anything from your brother? His things are in his room, separated by a partition. Tong, go get them, then I'll go see if my brother has his 2nd grade textbooks at home, and what materials he bought for 2nd grade. I'll check them out. Wu Tong went straight to Jin Zin's room, leaving the adults' room to chat and reminisce. She and Jin Zin had always been close friends, having grown up together. He was undoubtedly her brother. Tong is sensible and motivated, and he's learning on his own. Jin Zin, he really needs a closer eye, Su Mi-feng lamented with worry. She had only one son, a tall and strong man, but he wasn't very good at studying. With his current grades, if he persists, he should be able to get into university, but the specific number of places he can get into will depend on the intensive review and on-the-spot performance this year. It's really frustrating and helpless. I don't know if it's their fault as parents. Tong grew up together, and both his parents are university graduates. From childhood to adulthood, they have always been top students. If the brother and sister were in the same grade, they would leave Jinxon far behind. Su Mi-feng was proud of Tong, but also worried about her silly boy. Their current situation is only the child's last resort. If the child can pass the exam and have a better development, they naturally want him to strive for better results. Tong, you all know it. It was the same before. He always needed people to push him. Only now he seems to have figured it out. It's great that Jinxon has figured it out. Once he got the idea, he was unstoppable. His enthusiasm surprised her and the child's father. They said they were a little worried that the child was studying too hard. Of course, this couldn't be said in front of his younger siblings, as it would come across as boastful and irritating, rubbing salt into his sister's wounds. While the adults chatted about the children, Wu Tong headed straight for the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor was divided into 2 halves, Jin Zin's room and Wu Tong's. Although Wu Tong had only been able to stay at the Jin family's house during holidays since she started elementary school, her room had always been reserved for her. Their rooms had the same layout, but the large bedroom had a small partition in the middle, separating one side from the bedroom and the other from the study. Entering Jin Zin's room, Wu Tong headed straight for his bookshelf. His family valued knowledge, and the 2 children still had their childhood books, separated by dedicated shelves. Jin Zin's belongings might not be perfectly organized, but the shelves were kept relatively neatly, with textbooks and supplementary materials stacked by grade level. It was customary at number 1 high school to complete all high school courses by the second year, even beginning the first round of review. The third year began early, marking the start of the second round of review. It was normal that Jinzin's high school textbooks, aside from the liberal arts textbooks he didn't need, weren't at home. Wu Tong had anticipated this when she came up, and wasn't disappointed. However, the supplementary textbooks he'd used in his second year of high school were all at home, and even the reference books he'd used for a previous round of review were scattered around. Wu Tong took a quick look at the titles of the various reference books and workbooks. She wanted to buy some more practice materials. She'd already used up all the supplementary materials at home, and it was time to get some new ones. She'd previously bought mostly basic materials to consolidate her knowledge, but now she wanted to add some advanced materials. She'd found learning enjoyment in retaking freshman year subjects and had also discovered her independent learning abilities. With her current abilities, simply following the teacher's instructions was a bit of a waste. She wanted to see her limits. She planned to pre-study the material for her second and third years, which required basic practice materials for each subject. Today, she visited her grandmother's house to see what her brother was using for review. Materials used in review classes are more targeted. Pulling out a random math reference book, Wu Tong sat down at Jinzin's desk and began flipping through it. These days, reference books are meticulously crafted, covering almost everything in the textbook, even including guidance and analysis from renowned teachers. Wu Tong typically tries to understand the material first, then analyze it to solidify her grasp. Her consciousness touched the Enlightenment Stone tablet, entering a deep learning state. She eagerly absorbed new knowledge from the reference book in her hands. With a solid foundation laid by her freshman year retake, the math for her sophomore year wasn't a challenge for Wu Tong. She diligently comprehended it, unconsciously grabbing the pen and scrap paper from Jinzin's desk to work on her calculations and deductions, writing down line after line of rigorous mathematical formulas. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Support. Jinzin rushed in, parked his mountain bike casually in the yard, and rushed into the living room happily. Tall and big, wearing a simple short-sleeved shirt and long pants, with thick eyebrows, big eyes and a square face, he greeted with a sunny and happy face. "And, Uncle, where's my sister? She's studying hard upstairs. Please be quiet when you go upstairs." Sumi Fang pointed in the direction and reminded worriedly. "Got it," he spoke before he finished speaking. When the people downstairs heard the end of Jinzin's words, he had already stepped up to the second floor and turned to the third floor, and his back was out of sight. Such a big guy, almost an adult, but he still doesn't have any sense of stability. Sumi Fang was angry. "If he scares Tong when he turns around, I'll show you how I'll deal with him. He only grows taller but not more careful. Our Jinxin has a very good temper, all grown-up boys are." Jin Yu praised her nephew. A blood-related nephew, he couldn't be kinder to his daughter. Since he was little, no matter how much Jinxin liked something, whenever he saw Tong liked it, he would always give it to her. He never needed to be taught. He was incredibly generous. It was natural to have the best opinion of one's own child. Her nephew was generous, kind, sunny, healthy, and not spoiled. He was much more reassuring than her difficult little girl. "Little girl, so hard-working." Jinzin patted Wu Tong's shoulder from behind. He stared at the girl for a long time, but she didn't move at all. Was she really into it? A brother knows a sister better than a sister. He knew exactly what was going on with this girl before. Was she just pretending to be good? "Brother, you're back." Wu Tong was still in deep learning mode, still immersed in the problem-solving process, and her response was a bit slow and reflexive. This morning, she finished her sophomore course, the 5th required subject, and spent the latter half practicing a lot of exercises to verify her understanding. Another morning had flown by, and her brother had returned from school. After days of practice, she could now maintain a relatively focused state for extended periods without the aid of the Enlightenment Stone. Even when her consciousness was disconnected from the stone, she could still maintain a deep state of study for a while longer. "Do you want something? Your aunt and uncle won't buy it for you," was Jinzin's first thought. His aunt always made requests for Tong beyond his expectations only when he saw her progress. Folding his arms, leaning against the desk, Jinzin glanced at the door before whispering, like a thief, "How about I help you out? I have some pocket money I can give you." With only one sister like her, a brother should be incredibly loyal, and this was the time for him to demonstrate his loyalty. He was in his third year of high school, a difficult time. Internet cafes, game consoles, and other entertainment venues were no longer a concern for him, a high school senior. His pocket money was no longer worth anything. "I just want to study hard," Wu Tong recovered and playfully encouraged Jinzin. "Brother, you should work hard too. Maybe we can take the Gaokao together." If all went well, she'd even consider taking it a year early, just in time for Jinzin. "You're crazy, little girl. You're ambitious. I'll wait for you to catch up with me. Maybe then we'll even be in the same school. And I'll still be there for you." Jinzin rubbed Wu Tong's head. Little did he know, his words would soon come true. He was opening a drawer, pulling out 6 red bills and handing them to Wu Tong. "Take these for now. I'll give you more when I save some." He'd taken advantage of his rare summer break to spend lavishly, mourning the difficult times ahead. Most of his small stash was gone, and now he felt a bit embarrassed. If he'd known he'd have to support Tong, he'd have spent more slowly. Nowadays, electronic gadgets are becoming increasingly plentiful. From MP3 players and MP4 players, everyone's increasingly buying cell phones. Tong probably wants one, but his aunt is a strict keeper and hasn't agreed to buy him one yet, nor has she let his parents buy one. How about saving up some money before and after the new year and gifting Tong a cell phone? "Okay, brother, I want to study the 2nd and 3rd grade curriculum ahead of time. Give me a list of the supplementary textbooks you're using so I need to prepare some materials." Wu Tong unceremoniously accepted some materials, a gesture of devotion and care from Jinzin. Once she'd thoroughly studied every subject for her 2nd and 3rd year, she'd have to work through a sea of practice tests to improve her brother's grades. With a one-child policy in place, there were only the 2 of them in their family, with no siblings. She and Jinzin were only 2 years apart in age, not because there were any older siblings, but because Jinzin always wanted to be the eldest when they were little, which ultimately provoked Wu Tong, who insisted on calling him little brother, a habit she'd never changed. In that future memory, the young man had worked hard his senior year of high school, but his approach was flawed, leading to a downward spiral. He ultimately underperformed on the college entrance exam, only to be accepted into a 3rd-tier university and never having to repeat. This failure, coupled with his lack of knowledge about universities and his poorly chosen major, ultimately led to years of depression. He returned, a seasoned man, to take over his uncle's business. At that time, due to family difficulties, his uncle's investments had failed, and market competition compounded the decline in the business. The family toiled hard, barely making ends meet. The setbacks and hardships of life had left her with no trace of the radiant smile on her face or the sparkle in her eyes. Having glimpsed that glimpse of opportunity, Wu Tong resolved to address the root causes, helping her find a positive study method, improve her grades, and ace the college entrance exam, ultimately lifting her depression and setting her on a higher path. The brother and sister chatted and laughed as they finished the things Wu Tong had mentioned. Then, downstairs, they heard a call for lunch. Jinzin only had an hour and a half for lunch, and he had to rush back to school before 1:30 to continue his classes. Since he was busy, dinner was served as soon as he returned. Sumi Fen, Jin Yu, and Grandma Jin prepared a delicious meal. There was cold beef, braised chicken feet, pig ears with red oil, and cold cucumber and preserved eggs. The cold dishes were refreshing and appetizing, but the main event came later, a large bowl of poached fish. The broth was clear but not thin, and the fish was fresh but not dry. Wu Tong drank 2 bowls in a row, much to the delight of everyone. "I knew Tong would like this." Jin Yongning was so happy that his granddaughter liked it that he was even happier than he was eating it himself. He picked out the belly of the fish for Wu Tong. His precious granddaughter loved fish but wasn't very good at eating it. The bones and other parts of the fish could easily get stuck, but the belly of the fish had only one main bone, so if she ate it slowly, she wouldn't have to worry about it getting stuck. Knowing that the child was coming, he went to buy vegetables this morning and specially picked a big fish, because big fish are easier to pick out the bones. Chapter 9 Support. After dinner, Jinzin hurried to school. Although Xinchang County is not that big, it is a county town after all. It still takes about 10 to 20 minutes to ride a bike from Jin's house to school. The lunch break at noon really cannot be wasted. He hurried home, ate in a hurry, and then hurried to school. If everything goes well, he might be able to take a nap for 10 to 20 minutes at school to keep up some energy for the non-stop classes in the afternoon. If the schedule is tighter, it is estimated that his family may bring lunch to school. This is a small part of the busy life of a senior high school student. Seeing her brother like this, Wu Tong seemed to see her own future school life. After seeing Jin Xin off, the adults chatted about family matters. Wu Tong couldn't get a word in, so she simply said hello and went out to the bookstore. Walking out of the alley on the side of her grandfather's house, there is a Xinhua bookstore on the street in front. Upon hearing that Wu Tong was going to the bookstore to buy reference books, the elders immediately reached into their pockets to offer money to support her. They were always supportive of their children's school supplies. Wu Tong waved her hand. She had her saved allowance and a donation from her brother, and today she could become a major customer of the bookstore. I'll take Tong to the bookstore and take a walk. Jin Yongning, teacup in hand, was about to follow his eldest granddaughter out of the yard. Dad, don't buy Wu Tong anything, especially frozen ice cream, Jin Yu warned her worriedly. Wu Tong had an unrestrained temper, and her father doted on her. If he didn't warn her, she might give her another stomach ache later. Dad knows what's going on, and Tong is well behaved. Don't worry, big sister, Su Mifang pulled Jin Yu back. The child had been studying hard all morning, so it would be nice to have an old man take her out to relax. Her elder sister-in-law is good in every way, except that she is too strict with the children. Tong, come, go buy the snacks you want, or whatever you want to eat, Grandpa will buy it for you. Less than 10 meters after walking out of the door, Jin Yongning glanced at the door of his house. Seeing that his daughter did not chase him out, he took out 2 red bills from his pocket and stuffed them into Wu Tong's hand. His precious granddaughter was forced to study hard at home by her mother for a month, and she was still studying at home. How hard it was! He could not stop the child from studying, but he could secretly give her some relaxation. Grandpa is the best. Wu Tong did not refuse the old man's love for her, and put the money in her pocket with a smile. She would be filial to her grandparents in the future and she would have it. Her mother had been strict with her since she was a child, and her grandpa's secret care was her source of happiness. The father and son talked and laughed, and then they arrived at the Xinhua bookstore. It wasn't Wu Tong's first time here, so she found the high school supplementary materials section fairly familiarly. She had already memorized the list of books Jin Xin had given her, so she only took 1 copy of the books on the list. There were also some new materials that weren't on Jin Xin's list, so Wu Tong took 2 copies of each and gave one to the boy later to thank him for his generosity. Wu Tong didn't buy any more high school textbooks, as school was starting in a couple of days. At the start of this semester, the remaining science textbooks for the 2nd and 3rd year students would be distributed, so she wouldn't have to buy any more. She picked out mostly comprehensive review papers and consolidation exercises for individual subjects in books. She checked at noon and saw that the boy's bookshelf was already full of them. She covered up the answers he had done and used them again to do them, without having to buy more. She was a quick learner of exercises and reading, so it would be a bit wasteful to buy more than she needed. Huanggang's secret papers, 53, must-do questions, Wang Haoxian. Wu Tong was like a little mouse falling into a rice jar. Without hesitation, she took the selected materials into her arms one by one, and soon the books were piled high. Jin Yongning felt sorry for his granddaughter, so whenever Wu Tong selected another, he would take it. In a short while, Wu Tong and Jin Yongning had books piled high in their arms, which attracted the attention of people around them. Jin Yongning was very happy to see how much his precious granddaughter loved to study and was so good. He proudly took Wu Tong to the cashier to pay, and rushed to pay for the books. Your family only has so much pocket money, keep it for yourself, and let Grandpa pay for these. Jin Yu did not give his son Tong too much pocket money. Wu Jingzhong was useless and could not fight for better benefits for his granddaughter, so he helped Tong save some money. Wu Tong was at a loss for words. She'd brought home 400 yuan, they'd given her by her parents, knowing she'd need to buy materials. Her brother had just given her 600 yuan at noon, and her grandfather had just slipped her 200 yuan. In 2009, as a high school student, she had 1,200 yuan in her pocket. She felt quite wealthy. 2 large bags of materials and books were incredibly heavy. Jin Yongning wanted to carry them all herself, reluctant to tire her granddaughter, but Wu Tong wouldn't let her. Grandpa, while still strong, was old, and his feelings couldn't be trusted. Finally, the grandfather and grandson left the house and hailed a 3-wheeled scooter to take them home. Taxis were still rare in Xinjiang County at the time, and even now, even 10 years later, these covered scooters, repurposed from small 3-wheeled vehicles, were still the county's primary means of transportation. Small and convenient, they could go anywhere, and were ubiquitous on the streets, making them incredibly convenient. Hearing the commotion, Jin Yuan took over and helped carry the materials and books into the house. His hands felt heavy, a weight that made him marvel. His child was truly industrious. With all that material, how long would she finish it? For Jin Yuan, who had never been interested in studying, the thought of him composing so many booklets would drive him crazy. This time, Wu Jingzhong and Jin Yu remained silent about Wu Tong buying so many materials at once. They had all witnessed how diligently their daughter had studied this month. The materials she had previously bought were meticulously filled and meticulously completed. They now had complete faith in their daughter. She must have needed so much and would use it wisely. As parents, it was only natural to support their child's love of learning. Dad, how much is it? I'll give it to you. Jin Yu opened his wallet, and his father followed. Needless to say, he wasn't going to let Tong pay. Are you slapping your dad in the face? I bought some study materials for the child, and you are being so active. Your dad, I'm not too old to move. Jin Yongning glared at his daughter unhappily. Come on, go home, leave Tong here, I will send him back when school starts. Well, this is a quarrel. Jin Yu spread her hands helplessly. Old child, what can she do with her own father? Just send him away, and come again next time. Our dad has this temper. We have everything here. I washed the new clothes I bought for Tong, and they are in the closet in Tong's room. You can wear them as soon as you take them out. Sister, brother Wu, you can leave Tong at home without worry. Su Mifang smiled to rescue. Our family has been thinking about it for the whole summer vacation, and we have to keep Tong at home for a few days. Chapter 10, Surprise. Tong, your dad and I are going home first. Teacher Jin had no worries about leaving the child at her mother's house. The child had been raised at her mother's house since she was little, and she was as familiar with the place as at home, and even more doted on. Tong had studied hard this month, and it was just right for her to relax at her grandfather's. Wu Tong waved goodbye to her parents. She was staying at her grandmother's house for 2 days, and it would only take her half an hour to go home, so there was nothing to be sad about. After sending Jin Yu and his wife away, Jin Yongning instructed his son to take Wu Tong's reference books upstairs, and then happily invited his eldest granddaughter to eat watermelon. Holding the small watermelon in both hands, removing the top and adding a small spoon, Wu Tong was treated like a spoiled child at the Jin family. After eating the watermelon, her aunt took Wu Tong to try on the new clothes she had bought for her. Su Mifang had a keen eye for fashion, and the clothes she bought were just right for Wu Tong's age. The colors were light yellow, willow green, cherry blossom pink, all bright colors of youth. In Wu Tong's future memories, she hasn't worn such delicate colors for many years. After work, white, gray, black and blue became the main colors of her clothes. Reliving these colors that belonged to youth, Wu Tong smiled and realized that she was young now, and what color could she not wear? She cherished the time that belonged to her youth. Wu Tong took her aunt's arm and gave her a thumbs up of gratitude and praise, which made Su Mifang hug Wu Tong and smile from ear to ear. Raising a little girl is still a joy, and she can dress up to look beautiful. Her naughty boy, who was barely passable when he was a child, is so rough now. Clothes are just for changing seasons, and she buys a few sets of change clothes from a fixed store. The styles are similar, simple and convenient. There is no room for her to play at all, and she is not as fashionable as the child's father. After spending a while with her relatives, Wu Tong sat down at the desk again. It was already 4 o'clock. From Jinzin's bookshelf, Wu Tong pulled out a copy of the required math problems for high school sophomores. He only read the problems, covering up the answers Jinzin had already done. Wu Tong then redid them on scratch paper, filling in the answers for the ones Jinzin hadn't done. Could they truly be considered siblings? The reference books all suffered from the same problem. They were mostly covered in sleep. Hey, Tong, are you serious? Jinzin, following her mother's instructions, came up to call Wu Tong for dinner. Upon entering, he saw Wu Tong working tirelessly on the problems, no pretense at all. He couldn't help but ask cautiously, "Are you serious?" He had hurried back for dinner because he had to go back to school that evening for evening study. The Jin family's mealtimes now followed Jinzin's schedule, and Jinzin's arrival at dinner was always spot on. Of course, when have I ever joked about this? Therefore, quadrilateral EFGH is a parallelogram. Wu Tong finished the geometric proof in his hand, raised an eyebrow, and nodded seriously. "My sister is better than me." Jinzin gave a thumbs up. He truly felt Wu Tong's seriousness. When Tong really got going, he was no joke. He had that kind of drive. It was only after he entered his third year of high school that he began to learn to control himself, focus, and sprint for the college entrance exam. With so many college students these days, he wanted to earn a college degree, something to show for himself later on, right? Supporting his sister would give him more confidence. I'm here to support you." Jinzin pulled out the math textbooks from his backpack, starting with the 5th year of high school. At noon, he'd seen Wu Tong preparing for the second-year math class. Regardless of the reason, Tong had already started preparing, and as his older brother, he had to help prepare thoroughly. So, after school, he immediately gathered all the math textbooks from the second year of high school into his backpack and brought them back to Wu Tong. "Brother, you should be reviewing now, too." Wu Tong didn't want to disrupt Jinzin's study. Every moment of his third year of high school was precious. Jinzin smiled coolly and waved his hand. "Don't worry, little girl. We've only just started the second round of review. We won't need these textbooks for a few days, but even if we do, Shitao and I can share one." Tong's new textbooks would be distributed at the start of the semester, and there would be only 3 or 5 days left. What was there to delay? Use them as you please, don't be polite. Wu Tong knew that Shitao was the boy's deskmate, Zhao Lei, and also his childhood friend. The two of them were so close they could wear the same pants. "Okay, then, lend me these textbooks for 2 days, Wu Tong nodded. 1 required course, 3 electives, these were the last textbooks for high school math. If she worked hard, she could return the books to the boy by the next morning at the latest. Jinzin thought Wu Tong was just referring to the few days before school started. She had no idea that Wu Tong had actually spent less than 2 days thoroughly studying these textbooks. When Wu Tong hurried him to go to school the next morning to return the textbooks to him before morning reading, saying that he had finished learning them all, Jinzin thought he was still asleep. "Just flipping through them all, right? Twang, I'm really not in a hurry to use them." Jinzin scratched his head, his sleepy face still confused. "I really have finished learning them. I have supplemented your notes and hope it can help you. Brother, if you have any questions, you can always come to me for tutoring." Wu Tong smiled brightly, as if she was about to accidentally irritate a brother. How embarrassing. "Brother, it's a courtesy to reciprocate. These are some mock papers that you don't have yet. I think the questions are pretty good. Take them and practice." "No need to thank me." She made 2 copies, and she would finish her copy as soon as possible in the next 2 days. The tutoring brother was not just her empty talk, but she could really do it. Over the past 2 days, she hadn't just meticulously mastered the key points from her sophomore and junior year math textbooks, she'd even spent an entire midnight integrating all the high school math knowledge, creating a comprehensive, organized knowledge tree. Sets were organized into sets, functions into functions, sequences into sequences. With distinct branches and clear threads, the entire high school math formula lay within Wu Tong's mind, giving her a heightened understanding. Her mathematical knives had been sharpened to an impossibly sharp edge. Starting today, she would tame every high school math problem. Jinzin flipped through his textbooks in disbelief. Each chapter in each of his 4 math textbooks contained 1 or 2 sheets of densely written draft paper, each accommodating explanations of key points and derivations of formulas. The sheer scale of the effort was simply unimaginable. He casually glanced at his notes from the trigonometry chapter he mastered best. The neatly written notes were filled with rigorous, accurate, and detailed derivations and analyses, surpassing even the teacher's explanations. This verification result completely astonished Jinzin. It also proved that the little girl hadn't lied at all. She had truly completed all 4 math textbooks for her sophomore and junior years. Jinzin was stunned. 16 years later, and now, with his limited vision, he realized his sister was a genius. She'd mastered all the math for sophomore and junior years in just 2 days? This was unbearable. Chapter 11 School starts. Jinzin blankly accepted the test paper Wu Tong handed him, blankly went to school, blankly sat in his seat in the classroom, operating almost instinctively, feeling a bit like he'd been struck by lightning. Hi, he, Zhao Lei waved his hand in front of his deskmate and good friend. Seeing no reaction, he smirked and reached out to tug at Jinzin's upside-down Chinese textbook. Here comes the teacher. Jinzin was instantly startled. Suddenly snapping back to his senses, he was about to leap up, but Zhao Lei quickly grabbed him, otherwise the entire class would have been in shock. What's wrong? What's wrong with you today? The sudden jolt nearly sent him packing. Zhao Lei whispered, concerned. What happened at home? He hadn't heard anything. They lived in the same alley. If anything happened to the Jins, his family wouldn't have missed a thing. The old ladies knew better than anyone about any disturbances back there. Tell me, what's it like to wake up and suddenly realize your sister is a super genius? Jinzin asked, his voice lost in thought. Oh my god. I'm going to ascend. What is ascension? It's full of calamities. If they have a genius sister, they're constantly being compared. The stark contrast in grades would overwhelm them with a mountain of homework, turning them into nothing more than salted fish. What's wrong with their sister? Zhao Lei knew there was only one person Jinzin could call his sister, his aunt's cousin, the one he grew up with and now went to the same school with. No, I just realized my sister is pretty amazing. He was always open with his childhood friend about his own affairs. As for his sister, he wouldn't go into detail for now. Let him relax. Tong had really given him a real boost today. Study, study. Jinzin turned over the Chinese textbook and began to read with great intensity. If he didn't work hard and his grades weren't up to par, he'd lose face as a brother to Tong. Wu Tong considerately gave her brother ample time to react, not rushing to chase him down to help him with his review. She began to practice. She had mastered the knowledge, but passing the exam required more than just absolute mastery, it also required mastery. By practicing more, gaining a wider range of knowledge and seeing more angles, she could navigate the ever-changing challenges of the exam. In the 3 days before school started, Wu Tong thoroughly reviewed all the math materials on Jinzin's bookshelf, along with the various comprehensive math practice tests and exercises from the supplementary textbooks she had purchased that day, completely solidifying her high school math foundation. With every high school topic firmly within her grasp, practicing became a profoundly exhilarating experience. She laid flat on the math problems and the materials, feeling a sense of pride, as if she were on top of a mountain, overlooking all the other mountains. No matter how unexpected the test setter's angles, they all remained grounded in the knowledge from the textbooks. Wu Tong, however, found some of the more challenging problems quite intriguing. They were probably competition questions. Some had sources, others didn't. They challenged both divergent and logical thinking, pushing her to the limit in exploring various key points in high school math. Wu Tong's initial attempts led her to stumble in circles. She had never encountered this type of problem set before, and lacked the ability to think in this direction. With careful reflection, she managed to solve the problems, but it was just intuition. She had used more complex methods for some of the problems, but there must be simpler solutions. Wu Tong planned to study all her high school subjects on her own at the beginning of the semester and then look for more in-depth math textbooks. She wanted to know where those rigorous mathematical formulas came from, how they were derived, and what conditions were required to derive them. These unknown questions captivated Wu Tong. She thought she was slowly finding the right research direction for her. Wu Tong stayed at her grandfather's house until the evening of the 31st. After dinner, her uncle took her home. At her grandfather's house, she lived on the 3rd floor. She could meditate and exercise in the morning directly on the indoor balcony. Most of the buildings here were low, with the 3rd floor being the roof. They faced south and were sunny, with no shelter. She could exercise and study just like at home without being disturbed. The arrangement of things was what she usually used, and Wu Tong had no difficulty adapting. On September 1st, school officially started. As a sophomore, the start of school was a very simple matter. She just had to carry her school bag into the classroom and find her seat. When class time came, all the students arrived and the homeroom teacher was in place, and the tuition and miscellaneous fees were handed over to the homeroom teacher for processing. The current period was 9 years of compulsory education, and high school students still had to pay tuition and miscellaneous fees, 1,000 per semester. Top students could be exempted from tuition and miscellaneous fees, and even receive rewards. However, Wu Tong had never enjoyed this treatment. She thought that starting this semester, she could strive for this treatment. It was not because her family was short of tuition, but for the honor that would make her parents proud. Xinjiang No. 1 High School, the best high school in Xinjiang County, has about 20 classes per grade. Classes 1 and 2 are elite classes, classes 3 through 7 are Tsinghua classes, and classes below that are ordinary parallel classes, with each class having around 100 students. After the division into arts and science in the second year of high school, classes 1 and 2 remained as elite science classes, commonly known as elite fast-track classes, while a special arts class was reorganized. Wu Tong was in class 7, formerly the Tsinghua class. Her high school entrance exam scores were quite good, ranking around 300 to 400th in the county. She didn't make it into the elite class and was assigned to the second-tier Tsinghua class. The class's teachers, both in Chinese and math, the core subjects, and physics and chemistry, the secondary subjects, were all from elite classes, and the teaching staff was excellent. Class 7 was the science class. Students who chose the arts class were transferred to other arts classes, while those who chose science remained in their original class, eliminating the need for Wu Tong to switch classes. Their desks weren't the elegant, individual desks of later generations, but rather the old-fashioned, double-bedded, square stools without backrests. There were 6 desks in a row, 2 on each side, and 2 in the middle, arranged side by side, with aisles separating them. 10 rows in a classroom. It was mostly full now. Day students from No. 1 high school were those who lived close to the county seat, and most of the boarding students had already arrived yesterday afternoon. However, those who arrived early were mostly in the same situation, frantically helping each other churn out their summer homework. At this time, those with high academic scores and who had finished their summer homework were very popular. Wu Tong sat at the innermost wall of the 4th row. His deskmate was familiar, Zhang Shumi, who had also chosen science. She had already arrived and was also busy checking homework. Wu Tong was usually one of them. Their grades in the class were also about average, hovering around 30-50. Chapter 12 Baseline Test. Wu Tong, have you finished your summer homework? Zhang Shumi greeted vaguely without even looking up. She was very busy now. Done. Wu Tong took a seat and put the papers in her school bag that had been sorted and organized with book clips at the front of the desk, so that she could easily take them out when she handed in her homework. She took out an Oxford dictionary and opened it, continuing with the previous progress, continuing to memorize words. During the morning reading in the summer vacation, after memorizing the words and texts in the textbook, she recently started to memorize the dictionary from the beginning, and now she has moved on to the words starting with E. That's great. I had a lot of fun in the summer vacation, and I have made up for the homework in the past few days. I am still almost done. With a sigh, Zhang Shumi continued to copy hard, her pen flying. She had just borrowed a test paper from the substitute class, and she had to hurry up to finish copying, because there were people waiting, and she was also waiting for the next test paper to arrive. At 8 o'clock, the bell rang, and Chen Kexin, the homeroom teacher and chemistry teacher, stepped into the classroom. He went over the old start of school precautions, emphasizing the importance of focusing on the importance of getting back to school. Everyone, please pay attention. Those who should have copied homework were still doing it, and those who should have slacked off were still slacking off. Only a very small number of people in the front row were actually listening to the teacher's words. Finally, as if sensing that he hadn't achieved the desired deterrent effect, the teacher dropped a bombshell. Next Friday, we'll have a baseline test after the division. The questions aren't difficult, they're all about the basics, just to help you focus. Suddenly, the class was filled with grief. Everyone had so much fun during the summer vacation, who would have remembered to review? Would this just make the test a mess? Okay, everyone, you're like this when it comes to exams. Stop complaining. You didn't even think about studying during this summer vacation? You have to remember that this is your second year of high school. Time flies. Next year you'll be facing the college entrance exams. You're just starting out. The teacher began his lecture loudly, then called on the monitor and some of the more enthusiastic male students to bring in their new textbooks. He sat at the podium and instructed them, starting with the front row, to come up one by one and hand in their tuition. Each student signed their name and received a receipt. The morning was spent in the teacher's organized tuition and textbook distribution session, followed by a final study session. Wu Tong received her new textbooks. She checked the math version and found it was the same edition as her brother's. She already knew the basics and could start studying for physics, chemistry, and biology. Sitting in a corner against the wall, naturally undisturbed, Wu Tong happily studied, only getting up when it was her turn to pay. The rest of the time, the outside world's commotion had no concern for her. She wasn't usually a talkative person, so her deskmate didn't find it strange, as she herself was flipping through her new textbook with great enthusiasm. The morning class had just started, and everyone was in a state of unrestrained activity. Some were gossiping. Some were copying homework, some were reading miscellaneous books, some were secretly playing with their phones, and some were preparing for class in advance. The classroom, over 100 people in total, was bustling with activity. In the afternoon, the formal school day began. The schedule for the main and secondary subjects, plus a few pay, music, and art classes, had been posted on the blackboard that morning, and they had copied it and sealed it on the corner of their desks. High school's schedule was quite demanding, starting with morning self-study at 6:30 a.m. and ending at 9:30 p.m. with evening self-study, a packed day. With Wu Tong's start of school, the Wu family's schedule shifted into a frenzy of activity. Wu Jingzhong and Jinyu, whoever got home early, would arrange lunch and dinner, ensuring Wu Tong arrived home for dinner. If they were truly too busy, they would contact the Jin family in advance and have Wu Tong eat at their place. On rare occasions, they would let Wu Tong eat out. Wu Tong would preview each new textbook in her spare time, then compare it with the teacher's lecture in class, verifying her understanding and any gaps. Misunderstandings were unlikely. The Enlightenment Stone tablet had the power of deduction. If Wu Tong misunderstood, she would gain a clear understanding within. During her summer self-study, Wu Tong gradually verified and explored this point, ensuring she was on the right track. Now that her concentration had developed and she had entered a state of deep learning, her ability to absorb the teacher's lectures in class was naturally incomparable. She absorbed the teacher's detailed explanations in each subject, instantly grasping them. While the teacher was repeating his explanations and analyses, she had already begun studying the next chapter on her own. This way, when the teacher began the next class, she would listen again, which for Wu Tong constituted a thorough review. During evening self-study, after quickly finishing her homework for the day, Wu Tong would schedule the remaining time, including the time between washing up and resting at midnight, for self-study of each subject. Starting with physics and moving on to biochemistry, he kept it to 3 to 4 days, completing one subject after another, aiming to thoroughly master all of high school physics, chemistry, and biology by the time the placement test began. With every knowledge point mastered, he practiced practice after practice, integrating all the knowledge points from high school, building a framework for each of these subjects, just like with math. He used the fragmented and advanced knowledge to establish a framework for each of these subjects, constructing a discipline tree for each. The supplementary materials he'd bought that day were also used up during his practice sessions. 2 thick stacks stood against the wall, and empty pen refills testified to Wu Tong's dedication. During morning self-study, Wu Tong still dedicated his morning study to Chinese and English. 2 weeks into the semester, he had successfully memorized the remaining key classical Chinese texts and English vocabulary from high school. For now, Wu Tong focused solely on memorization for these 2 subjects, focusing his efforts on improving his skills in the purely scientific subjects of mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology. Wu Tong usually wakes up at 4:40, washes up quickly, and begins his morning breathing exercises at 5 o'clock. At 5:40, he goes downstairs to wash and freshen up, grabbing breakfast and heading to school. The Agricultural Bureau's staff quarters aren't far from the first high school, just 3 blocks away. Wu Tong's bike takes him about 15 minutes to get to school, park, and go upstairs, managing his time perfectly. Wu Tong maintains a 5-hour sleep schedule, a fetal breathing, infant sleep achieved after conditioning with the Enlightenment Stone steel, allowing him to fall asleep as soon as he touches the pillow. These 5 hours of high-quality sleep are equivalent to double or triple the average person's, enough for Wu Tong to recover the energy expended throughout the day, as well as the vitality built up from his daily breathing exercises. Consequently, despite this intense schedule of deep learning, Wu Tong hasn't become frail. Instead, he's become increasingly energetic and clear-minded, creating a virtuous cycle. Amidst this orderly and busy cycle, The final exams officially arrived, and the classroom books were moved out in advance. Day students' books were usually moved to the dorms of well-connected boarding students or piled up on the redundant desks and chairs in the last row of the podium. Wu Tong's books were moved to the dormitory of his deskmate Zhang Shumi on Thursday night. Chapter 13 Exam. Wu Tong was unusually eager for the scheduled placement test. She had done her best to build a solid foundation, mastering the high school portion of math, physics, chemistry, and biology. She had also pored over countless mock exams and workbooks, and now she desperately needed a real test to put herself to the test. The exam schedule and room numbers were distributed the day before the exam, based on final grades from the previous semester. Wu Tong had only ranked 39th in her class at the end of the previous semester, but she was about 600 to 700th overall. She was nowhere near the top of either her class or her grade, so she took the exam in room 42, room 11. The first exam, Chinese, began at 7:50. The preparatory bell rang, and the invigilator emphasized exam discipline before handing out the papers. When you receive your papers, first check them for missing or misprinted parts. Report any issues promptly, the invigilator reiterated, a crucial point he always emphasized before handing out the papers. After receiving the exam paper, which was spread out in 8-page format, Wu Tong first examined it, glancing over the general questions. It was the usual basic knowledge plus classical Chinese translation, ancient poetry and prose appreciation, and modern Chinese reading and composition sections. Nothing looked particularly unfamiliar. After confirming that everything was clear, she began to fill in her class name. When the bell rang and the invigilator announced the start of the exam, she began to carefully examine the questions, writing her answers neatly. She had also put in the effort to retake Chinese, focusing on memorizing everything she needed to recite. The Chinese exam was now much clearer than before. Wu Tong barely hesitated as she worked through the basic knowledge, classical Chinese translation, and ancient poetry and prose appreciation sections. Her thoughts flowed quickly, her pen flowing freely. Compared to her ease in the previous sections, the modern Chinese reading and composition sections required more effort. These two sections couldn't be solved by memorization alone. There were no set answers. Wu Tong could only do her best to carefully read the text based on the questions she'd been asked, then write down the most relevant answer she could think of. Since she'd been progressing smoothly with the basics section, which had clear answers, only an hour and 10 minutes had passed, leaving her with 80 minutes to write the essay. The essay was a source material essay, requiring her to read the material, choose her own style, and create her own title, staying within the scope of the material. The essay should be no less than 800 words. This was a change based on the newly released Gaokao essay format. Wu Tong tried her best to identify a clear perspective and expand upon it, defining the style and content in a positive direction, using her vocabulary and sentence structure to avoid feeling dry. Previously, Chinese was her strong subject. It was the subject she least dreaded during exams. However, Wu Tong now found that after doing too many purely science-based exams, compared to those that required her to decipher the author's thoughts and feelings, appreciate the emotions they were expressing, and rack her brains to write, she found that math, physics, and chemistry, where there was only one correct answer and a clear direction, were more satisfying. It took Wu Tong a full hour to finish the essay. The essay was worth 60 points, more than a third of her total score of 150 for the Chinese language exam, so she couldn't afford to neglect it. She'd done better than she'd ever done before, and she couldn't let this essay lag behind. With 20 minutes remaining, Wu Tong carefully checked her paper twice, and the 2.5-hour Chinese language exam was over. At 10:30, the bell rang. At the sound of the bell, all students who hadn't submitted their papers were to stop writing immediately, or their scores would be invalid. This was a rule of the Gaokao that the school had been drilling for students since the beginning of their schooling. Every exam should be approached with the utmost care, a message the teacher and invigilator never tired of emphasizing. The students in this exam room generally studied diligently. There might have been some cheating, but it wasn't blatant. And since the Chinese language exam was a subject that everyone was generally good at, the exam room discipline was generally acceptable. After a 20-minute break, the exam resumed at 10:50. This time, it was physics, a subject Wu Tong could now excel in, having honed her skills for many days. With the same emphasis, the test papers and draft answer sheets were distributed one by one. After the same review, Wu Tong began to work on the paper from the beginning. Having completed all of her high school physics self-study and practiced countless exercises, Wu Tong was now truly proficient. She could almost instantly grasp the answers to the multiple-choice questions after reading them, finishing them almost instantly. For the fill-in-the-blank questions, she could simply scribble on her draft paper and clearly determine the correct answers, which she filled in on the answer sheet. For the calculation questions, Wu Tong read through them thoroughly, her ideas crystallizing in her mind. For greater precision, she wrote them down on a draft sheet before transcribing them onto the answer sheet. Even though Wu Tong approached the exam with extreme care and slowed down her pace, her thorough grasp of the key points and her practiced speed allowed her to complete the entire paper in just half an hour. Wu Tong then spent another 20 minutes meticulously and quickly redoing her exam, then double-checked it. After confirming there were no errors and realizing there was no room for change, she finally stopped wasting time, stood up, handed in her paper, and left the exam room. She wasn't even the first to hand in her paper, others had already done so before her. Wu Tong's practice of turning in her paper early spread from this physics exam. The first exam of the afternoon was math, Wu Tong's most comfortable subject. The exam lasted from 2 to 4, and Wu Tong wasn't about to let her guard down or skimp on the subject just because she knew she'd get a good score. She answered the questions with the same meticulousness and slowness. The first question was a set problem, one that had previously been considered unorthodox and frustrating for Wu Tong. Now, Wu Tong no longer felt the same confusion or headache. After reading the question, the answer was already in her head. She chose A without hesitation. Then, infinitives, functions, every single knowledge point was covered. After 3 exams, Wu Tong could clearly feel that this exam, just as her teacher had said, tested the fundamentals, but with a lot of flair. The application of knowledge points was extensive, and the questions continued to build upon the foundations. The last 2 questions were particularly challenging, and Wu Tong felt they were beyond the syllabus. After rechecking her answers 3 times, Wu Tong felt confident in her answers, unable to change anything. It only took her an hour, and she turned in her paper early again. This time, Wu Tong was the first person in the room to do so. The fastest-paced student in the same room had only just begun working on the second question of the main exam. Chapter 14 Easy. Wu Tong's raised hand, standing up to hand in his paper, though subtle, still caught the attention of some in the exam room. Surprised glances flicked across his face. Handed it in already? Was he done answering or marking it? However, everyone was still anxiously working on their papers, and the attention they could devote to Wu Tong was limited. Wu Tong's early submission also served as a catalyst for their work, prompting them to speed up their work. Some had already handed in their papers. The first student to hand in the paper was the first to do so. The invigilator personally came over to collect the papers. He wanted to say, "It's still early," and urged Wu Tong to review it carefully and think more carefully about any questions he didn't understand, and not just give up. However, when he saw Wu Tong's filled, clearly organized paper, complete with drafts densely packed with calculations, he realized that while he wasn't a math teacher, he possessed at least the basic skills. A student with such aptitude for answering questions wouldn't just scrawl and make up stories to get by. Even the top students in classes 1 and 2 rarely managed to do this kind of work, right? So, was this the dark horse coming out of their room? Had there been any top-performing students slipping through the cracks in this exam room? He silently collected the test paper and signaled Wu Tong to be quiet and leave. He also announced the time and issued a warning: the exam is halfway through. Hurry and work on the questions. Don't look around or chat with others. Cheating will result in a 0 for this exam, and you will be publicly criticized and given a demerit. Wu Tong handed in her paper. With over an hour left until the next exam, and their classroom occupied as an exam room, she couldn't return to the classroom. She wasn't a boarding student, so there was no such thing as resting in her dorm. On campus, Wu Tong found a quiet study corner and flipped through her biology textbook. She was retaking the subject for the second time. A review to consolidate her memory for tomorrow's exam. Biology had previously been Wu Tong's worst subject, but now that her weaknesses had been addressed, she had the time, so retaking it wouldn't be redundant. The second exam was in the afternoon, chemistry. As the homeroom teacher, Wu Tong had some basic chemistry experience. Having already completed high school chemistry, She found these problems incredibly effortless, like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Wu Tong's pen swished through equations, reactions, and structures, all flowing smoothly from start to finish. Her gaze guided her thoughts, her handwriting followed hers. After half an hour of meticulous, focused work, and repeated scrutiny, Wu Tong submitted her paper early once again. There were no evening study sessions during the exam period, so she could go home straight after submitting her paper. She planned to review several English and biology papers that evening to practice for tomorrow's exam. The exams began at 8 a.m. on Saturday, for the final two subjects, English and biology. With her vastly expanded vocabulary, mastering the entire high school vocabulary, and intensive listening and memorization of texts, dictionary words, and listening practice, the English problems had become surprisingly easy. Wu Tong finished her high school biology coursework before the exam during the 2 days of early submission. She continued to review and consolidate her knowledge. It was as if she'd sharpened her skills for this exam, and with her speed and polish, she naturally passed with ease. The final exam was handed in early again, and the invigilator had completely memorized Wu Tong, the student who, except for Chinese, always handed in her paper halfway early. The entire exam hall, almost everyone in the hall, remembered her as well. Her submission signaled the end of the exam each time Wu Tong handed in her paper early. It was a thrill for them. They were only halfway through, while others had already finished. Who is this mastermind, playing the fool to eat the tiger, playing with the shrimp in their shallow pond? It couldn't be just for show, a joke on the exam, could it? The students in Hall 11 had discussed the matter privately, but since it was exam time, everyone was preoccupied with their preparations. Their curiosity was suppressed for now, spreading only among a few, without causing much of a stir. After her Saturday exam, Wu Tong handed in her paper half an hour early. Since she had no classes that afternoon, she didn't have to rush home. She said goodbye to her parents and said she was going to the bookstore and would be back later. Teacher Jin Yu told her not to rush home if she felt hungry, but to go to her grandparents' house first or buy something to eat. Wu Tong had been looking for some advanced math materials, a plan she had previously planned, and now she had the time, so she could make it happen. Before leaving, Teacher Jin even gave Wu Tong a special 1,000 yuan for books. This was because Teacher Jin remembered that Wu Tong had bought 2 large books last time, and besides the one for Jin Xin, she had already finished the rest in the past 2 weeks. As parents, seeing their child's diligence and dedication, they naturally wanted to support her wholeheartedly. So this time, Jin Yu tripled the amount they had previously given Wu Tong for books. Previously, they had worried she would spend money recklessly, buy unnecessary things, or eat junk food. Now, they were giving her the extra money, hoping that Wu Tong would have more money and feel like going out and relaxing. They worry when their children don't study, but now that their children are so eager to learn, studying at home every day, they worry they'll become dull. Parents' hearts are so contradictory, they simply love their children. 3 blocks from Xinchang No. 1 High School lies the county's largest Xinhua bookstore, which is also where Wu Tong last visited, near her grandfather's house. There's a bus right outside the high school, but Wu Tong rode her bike and went there on her own. Last time she'd been to the bookstore, she'd gone straight to the point, choosing only the high school supplementary materials section. This was the section of the bookstore she was most familiar with. She wanted to buy some advanced math books, but she had no idea where to start. Wu Tong didn't have the habit of pretending to know anything and wandering around. She simply went straight to the counter and asked a clerk who was preparing to stock the shelves. "Hello, I'd like to buy some university textbooks, like advanced math. Which section are they in?" Goming, a longtime Xinhua bookstore clerk, looked up at Wu Tong in surprise. The child looked young, perhaps still in high school. Wu Tong has a tender face, and her cheeks are still a little round with baby fat, which makes her look even younger. "Don't you have them in the store?" Wu Tong frowned slightly. "If they are not available here, then the whole county probably doesn't sell them. She may need to go to the city or the province to buy them. No one is willing to let her travel long distances alone, and she will definitely have to ask her parents to come along, which is quite troublesome. Yes, we have all genuine textbooks in our store, however, there is no university in their county, and college students are a minority. Therefore, basically no one buys these textbooks. They have been lying there for years, and there is no record of them being sold. Gaming never expected that she would meet a high school student who came to buy them today. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Advanced Mathematics. Gaming looked Wu Tong over again. A studious child is always popular, so she couldn't help but add, "Child, are you planning to enter a competition? If so, you don't actually need to buy them. Just down Ren Avenue is the county library, where they have these textbooks. You can get a card with your ID and borrow them directly." These were university textbooks. For a student who only needed them temporarily and would receive them when they started university, buying them wasn't a very cost-effective option. The library had a comprehensive selection of textbooks and was easy to borrow, making it a better option. Wu Tong slapped her head. She'd been thinking too much? How could she have forgotten about the library? As the face of the county's culture, the county library had a fairly extensive collection. While it might not have rare and exotic books, it did have a good selection of books covering a wide range of subjects for the general public. Comrade Wu also frequently borrowed books on agriculture and machinery from the county library. How could she have forgotten that? It seemed as if a teacher had mentioned that students could borrow books from the library with their students' ID cards. Given her reading speed, buying books wasn't a wise or cost-effective decision. Her family's money was earned through her parents' diligent work, so any unnecessary waste was worth saving. Wu Tong sincerely thanked Gaming. "Thank you, Auntie." Her gratitude was genuine. "Don't be polite. The textbooks you requested are rarely bought in the county, and the store doesn't have much stock. My child is about your age, and if they could study as passionately as you do, I'd be so lucky." Gaming waved her hand. She was just making a casual remark. Wu Tong left the house and turned back to where she'd been riding her bike. The library was on the other side of the same avenue as the first high school, quite close to her home. The county library wasn't very large, a 3-story building that also housed staff offices and a warehouse. Wu Tong had been there before, but back then, as a sidekick for Comrade Wu, purely for fun, occasionally checking out some storybooks. She wasn't familiar with the place either, so she went straight to the administrator for advice. The library wasn't crowded, it was one of the few quiet spots in the county. The administrators were extremely busy. Most of the people who came were familiar faces, well versed in the layout and their needs, so they were rarely needed. Their duties primarily involved registering books and keeping the place organized. On the rare occasion someone came to ask, the administrator was quite welcoming. "The advanced mathematics textbook you're looking for is on the 3rd shelf in Section D. University mathematics and other books are all in that area." Someone else was reading in the library, and the two of them exchanged questions quietly. Wu Tong followed the instructions, went to Section D, and found the textbooks she was looking for. Advanced mathematics, analytic geometry, linear algebra. She pulled out the advanced mathematics textbook first and took a look. The content was quite profound. With her full high school math foundation, it seemed a bit overwhelming at first glance. To fully grasp it, she would probably need to engage in in-depth study to gain a deeper understanding. Wu Tong then took the analytic geometry, linear algebra, and advanced mathematics textbooks. A total of 3 textbooks, and went to the registration desk to register. She had previously inquired about the 2-week borrowing period. Although there were still quite a few math books on the D section shelf, Wu Tong wasn't too greedy. She'd first studied 3, thoroughly understanding them before moving on to the others. Since she was just starting out with this advanced math, she'd given herself extra time and would adjust her borrowing strategy based on her progress. Leaving the library, Wu Tong couldn't help but shield herself from the direct sunlight on the shop floor with the sight of a book. September was still a scorching summer heat wave, and she'd just been going back and forth, driven by the desire to borrow books, so she hadn't felt much of it. Now, emerging from the cool, shady library, the sun was incredibly glaring. Fortunately, theirs was one of the first to be built, and the tall trees lining the roadside provided some shade, otherwise, it would have been too daunting to venture out. On the way, Wu Tong bought herself a popsicle to cool off. She simply relished the refreshing taste. As she remembered, summer temperatures would only get hotter with each passing year. She still needed to practice the Chaoyangziki method diligently, cultivating the state of being immune to cold and heat. Tong, you're back. Have you eaten yet? Wu Jingzhong leaned out of the kitchen at the sound of the door opening. Teacher Jin Yu had a meeting before leaving get off work that morning, and she had just arrived home and was relaxing in the living room. Are you feeling hot? Sit down and cool down. Dad's going to make you some watermelon to eat first. He had a day off from work today, so he'd gone to the morning market and bought some small hanging watermelons. He'd left them in the shade of his room, ready to eat when he wanted. These small watermelons had thin skins and sweet flesh, making them easy to eat by yourself. Cutting them in half and eating them with a spoon was perfect, and Wu Tong always loved them. Don't blow them into the air vents, or you'll get a headache, Jin Yu warned. Wu Tong, feeling hot, liked to stand in the air vents to cool down, which was a great way to get sick. Got it. Wu Tong took the watermelon her father offered her, scooped a bite, and then opened her wallet and handed it back to Teacher Jin, the money her parents had given her for buying books that morning. Did you make it to the bookstore today? Take this and use it to buy books later. Jin Yu handed the money back. The cost of her child's education was the expense she cared least about. I misjudged it. I can borrow the books I want from the library. A kind woman at the bookstore reminded me today about the library. Wu Tong, munching on watermelon, waved her mother back, saying she'd found a more convenient place and wouldn't have to spend the money. I've already checked it out. The couple understood clearly that their child had gone to the bookstore and then to the library. So, their daughter had been running back and forth constantly, leaving her no time to eat. Feeling sorry for the child, Wu Jingzhong hurried to the kitchen to serve Wu Tong and Teacher Jin. He was home today, and he was the one cooking. They had a good relationship and had always practiced a collaborative approach since their marriage. Laundry, cooking, cleaning, shopping, whoever was more convenient did it. Wu Jingzhong's work schedule was closer to home, and his schedule was more regular. Since childhood, Wu Tong had been the one who cooked more, developing a refined culinary skill. He never shirked household chores. After dinner, Wu Tong chatted with her parents before retreating to her room, connecting with the Enlightenment stone steel and sinking into a deep state of study. She opened the 6th edition of Tongji University's Advanced Mathematics, published 2 years earlier, and the first chapter caught her eye, Functions and Limits. Chapter 16 Shock. From mappings and functions to limits of sequences, to limits of functions, the first chapter, Functions and Limits, alone was divided into 10 sections, each with its own subsections. The content was vast and profound. For Wu Tong, this first encounter with such advanced mathematics felt almost like a huge leap compared to what she had learned in high school. If Wu Tong hadn't truly mastered high school math and was now deeply immersed in it, her comprehension reaching its peak, she would have been lost in a state of confusion. But now, waking up at the perfect time, she had plenty of time, and with the help of the Enlightenment Stone, why not study? Wu Tong calmed down, meticulously studying word by word, sentence by sentence, formula by formula, deducing step by step, slowly absorbing the knowledge and practicing with the exercises after class. While not as intensive as her freshman year retake, her progress was encouraging, progressing smoothly without any major setbacks. As she deduced, she gradually developed the logical thinking required for advanced mathematics, a process that was steadily accelerating. Advanced mathematics opened a new chapter in Wu Tong's mathematical world. She spent an entire afternoon and evening thoroughly mastering Chapter 1, Functions and Limits. Before returning to school for evening self-study on Sunday, she finished studying Chapter 2, Derivatives and Differential Calculus, and also reviewed part of Chapter 3. While Wu Tong was immersed in her advanced mathematics, the sophomore and senior teachers at Xinchang No. 1 High School were also working overtime to grade the papers. The teachers generally graded the papers cross-checking, with a machine grading the multiple-choice questions. Others assigned students to individual teachers based on the questions, with the final scores determined only when the scores were aggregated. This year's college entrance examination results for Xinchang No. 1 High School were not ideal. None of the top 2 universities were admitted. The pass rate for undergraduates was only acceptable for the top classes, while the lower classes were abysmal, with some classes even failing entirely. This infuriated the principal, who was also strictly monitoring the progress of the current senior class. He was also closely monitoring the progress of the second-year class, preparing for the next year. He was also working tirelessly to establish a benchmark for Xinchang No. 1 High School. Consequently, The second-year class received a high-quality preliminary exam upon arrival to gauge the number of promising students and carefully identify and cultivate them. During Sunday night study sessions, each class teacher hurried over, each delivering a sullen, almost identical lecture. They then instructed the monitor to oversee class discipline before hurriedly returning to their office. Having just finished grading the papers, they were back to work, scrambling to compile the scores. 2 teachers formed a team, each responsible for tallying the scores for one exam room. Duan Hong, the head of the second-year class, frowned. He was the homeroom teacher for Class 1 and the top math class, Class 1 and 2. All the math papers for the mock exam had been graded and were ready for the final scoring process. The scores for the top 10 exam rooms had already been tallied, and not a single one had achieved a perfect score. No matter how poorly the students in Classes 1 and 2 performed, they wouldn't have ranked higher than 400th. This meant that even with such a simple test, even with a slightly refined approach, not a single student from these 2 elite classes scored a perfect score. So what if the highest score was 148? It wasn't a perfect score, it wasn't a perfect score. He was deeply dissatisfied with his class, it must have been a lack of practice. He would give those lazy students a hard time. They were so busy, they had completely let loose all summer. Perfect scores on the multiple choice questions, perfect scores on the fill-in-the-blank questions, perfect scores. That's a perfect score, the teacher, tallying the scores for room 11, exclaimed in surprise as they compiled the scores for the second round. When this statement first came out, they'd assumed a student with a math weakness had excelled, scoring a perfect score, a good performance. Duan Hong walked over and took a look at the perfect score. The handwriting was neat, the answers were rigorous and logical, and the last 2 questions, which were beyond the syllabus, were also answered perfectly. This proved that this student had been studying independently and had surpassed the school's instructions. He was a promising student. He made a mental note to keep an eye on the student later and perhaps even get him into a competition. However, no one had expected this sentence to repeat 5 times during the score combination process, instantly sparking curiosity among all the teachers in the office. What kind of auspicious location was this in Exam Hall 11? How could there be full marks in every subject except Chinese? Could it be the same students' scores? 2 teachers exchanged a look of confusion and uncertainty. These 2 teachers were the invigilators in Exam Hall 11. They suddenly remembered the person in their own exam room. Is it the girl who handed in her paper half the time early? If so, it was even more astonishing. Turning in half the time early and getting full marks on all the papers was simply outrageous. Teacher Liu, Teacher Zhang, what are you talking about? They understood the first half of the sentence. It was possible for the same student to score perfectly. This possibility was even greater than the possibility of a perfect score appearing in all subjects in the 11th exam room. The other teachers, keen-eared, had already overheard the 2 teachers' whispers and were immediately curious to find out. Especially for the homeroom teachers of the top-tier classes 1 and 2. If there was truly such a rare and promising student with perfect scores in all subjects except Chinese, they would be so lucky. They had to fight for it. Fight for it. It would be a stroke of heaven not to secure such a talent. Teacher Duan, Teacher Chen, we're talking about a young woman who, while we were invigilating, handed in her papers almost halfway early in all subjects except Chinese. We took a quick look at them and saw they did quite well. So, we're wondering if these perfect scores could be from the girl. If so, congratulations to our school. With such a score, domestic universities would be vying for admission, begging for prizes to enroll. A spot in the top 2 universities was a sure thing. Clearly, all the teachers understood this. Open the papers, Duan Hong, as the head of the grade group, made a decision immediately. Whether it is true or not, it will be verified on the spot, and there is no time to waste on guesswork. They rehearse every monthly exam according to the college entrance examination model, and the papers are all bound and the names are covered. After the grading work is completed, the papers will be opened and the scores of the students in each subject will be entered, and finally summarized. Usually, the grading starts from the first examination room. This time, all the teachers acted with the same goal. First, the papers in the 11th examination room were opened and the papers with full marks were pulled out. The class to which this paper belongs with the same name was revealed to everyone at this moment. Teacher Zhang specially found Wu Tong's Chinese paper. The bright red score of 133 is already a rare high score in Chinese, and a very excellent result. But compared with the good results of the other 5 subjects with full marks, this result in Chinese can only be a foil. Chapter 17 Dark Horse. With a score of 133 in Chinese, and full marks in English, math, physics, chemistry, and biology, for a total of 733, this score would put him at the top of the provincial science exam. If his Chinese score could improve further, he'd be on track to break the record. Wu Tong, Class 7, Grade 12, Lao Chen, this student is in your class. Where did this dark horse come from? With full marks in all 6 science subjects except Chinese, the results were simply dazzling, leaving them in disbelief that their school, with its meager resources, could produce such an exceptional student. All the teachers were instantly torn between envy and whether or not to congratulate him. The school had just started, and a talent like this had slipped through the cracks. The elite class would surely not let him go, and the school leadership would undoubtedly support his transfer to the elite class to receive the best educational resources. If word of this student's grades got out, schools from across the city and even the province would likely come poaching him. Just the gleaming eyes of the 2 head teachers of classes 1 and 2 spoke volumes about their eagerness to recruit him. No teacher suspected such a score was cheated. Not only did the invigilators consider themselves quite responsible, it was practically impossible for a student to have cheated. Rather, the questions on this exam were carefully compiled and screened by the teachers themselves. Most of the questions had been modified from the original format, leaving no known answers before the exam was graded. Furthermore, there was no risk of the exam being leaked. To achieve such a brilliant score amidst such complex knowledge and challenging questions simply speaks to the student's genuine excellence, a solid foundation, advanced self-study, clear logical thinking, and adaptability. Old Chen wiped his face. Before he opened the exam papers, he had never imagined such a grand prize would fall upon his family. It was the sheer frustration of not being able to keep such a talented student that made him want to curse. To be honest, he didn't have a very deep impression of Wu Tong. He wasn't usually very active in class. If he remembered correctly, his final grades were just average. How could he have suddenly achieved such a remarkable feat this summer? Or perhaps, as the saying goes, a comeback. Had he not relaxed during the summer and crammed in, and now his mind was turning to the right path? He seemed to recall that the child's mother also worked in the education system, teaching at the county primary school. With a teacher at home, she must have placed exceptional emphasis on her child's studies. However, this child's sudden burst of energy had only given him this moment of vain joy. After the teacher's surprise wore off, they were delighted. With such a promising young talent, no matter which class he was in, as long as they ensured he performed well in the future, at least their class would have a foundation. The scoring process continued. Since the papers from the 11th exam room had been opened and Wu Tong's scores had been recorded, the others were also entered. The scores were gradually being entered into the computer. They generally hovered around the passing line, with 1 or 2 scoring over 100 in a core subject, and few above 80 in physics, chemistry, and biology. Aside from Wu Tong, the miracle, few students scored over 130 in a core subject. The teachers present weren't overly disappointed. This was the expected level of performance in the 11th exam room, wasn't it? It was Monday morning self-study, and during morning reading time, many students in Class 7, Grade 12, were still drowsy when the head teacher entered the classroom at the ringing of the morning reading bell. Dear students, the results of this baseline test have come out. I will post the report cards on the wall later, and the red list will also be posted on the display board. You can take a look at it after the morning self-study get out of class. I just want to say that everyone did worse than I expected. Even the basic questions can still cause so many mistakes. It really disappoints all the teachers of various subjects. You will take the college entrance examination next year. How much time can you waste? Students who are ranked at the bottom and whose grades have declined, I hope you can reflect on yourselves and ask yourself why it is like this. Of course, there are still some students who performed extremely well in this exam. I hope everyone can learn from them. Who are you talking about? It might be those few people. It's probably the class monitor or the student committee members, Mr. Chen's favorites. Zhang Shumi gossiped with Wu Tong in a low voice. Wu Tong, how did you do in the exam? I almost did not do any homework. I didn't read any books during the summer vacation. I just did it based on my feelings. It should be okay. I reviewed during the summer vacation, Wu Tong responded softly. After the test, Wu Tong had a basic estimate of his score. Except for Chinese, There would be no other basic mistakes. It would depend on the teacher's mood to decide whether to deduct points on the paper or something like that. It should be a good score. I'm so envious that I'm crying. Zhang Shumi seemed to say the same thing. This meant that her grades were stable and her pocket money would not be deducted by her mother at home. The teacher was still speaking, and the class only discussed it quietly for a moment before returning to normal order. After Lao Chen finished a heartfelt encouragement about grades, he tore off the tape and stuck the report card in his hand on the wall beside the blackboard. He was truly heartbroken. The class had finally produced a brilliant young talent, and the two head teachers of the top classes 1 and 2 had been eagerly awaiting him. If he hadn't been hoping that he would first communicate with the students and maintain some reserve for the top class, the two head teachers would surely have come to him on their own initiative. Which student wouldn't yearn for the top class? The school already had a policy that if the students ranked in the top 100, they could be promoted to the top class according to their wishes. The top class was the signature of their school, equipped with the best teachers and enjoying the best treatment. How could a student not be happy to be in the top class? When Lao Chen posted the report card on the wall, it naturally attracted the students' attention, especially the first 2 rows, who could see it clearly without leaving their seats. Students in the back needed very good eyesight. Oh my god, holy crap, exclamations emanated from those with the best view. Habitually checking who took first place and how many points they had, they were immediately dazzled by the string of scores. 150, 150, 100, 100, a total of 100. A whopping 733, a landslide high score. How could anyone achieve such theoretically impressive scores? Is that even human? Oh my god, what the hell? Those in the back row, unable to see clearly, were instantly scrabbling with curiosity. They hated being left hanging like that. Just as those in the front row were about to turn and share their shock with the students behind them, they caught Old Chen's subdued gaze and immediately shut their mouths. Seeing that they were quite sensible, Old Chen didn't say anything more. He clapped his hands and said, "Okay, it's time for morning self-study now, everyone continue with morning reading." Then, he paused and said, "Wu Tong, come out with me." Before the top class came to him without any shame, he always had to communicate with his students first, just in case. People still have to have dreams. Chapter 18 Insights. The teacher was lecturing all the time, and Wu Tong paid a little attention and listened attentively. At the same time, her subordinates were slowly deducing the Lagrange mean value theorem, which she had just come across, on a piece of draft paper. Let fx equals. Since fx is continuous on the closed interval, a, b, and differentiable within, a, b, fx is continuous on the closed interval, a, b, and differentiable within, a, b. The above proof is obtained when b, then the function fx, is continuous on the closed interval, a, b, and differentiable on the open interval, a, b. Then there exists at least one point Greek letters I within the open interval, a, b, such that f, Greek letters I, equals, fb, fa, comma, ba. She now has a closer rapport with the Enlightenment stele. There is no need to deliberately connect. Anytime, anywhere, as long as she calms down, she can immediately enter that state of deep learning without distractions. She can enter and stop at any time, very freely. When Wu Tong heard the teacher calling her, she was stunned for a moment before she reacted, put down her pen and stood up. Teacher, at the stairwell, teachers and students gathered and headed for the teacher's office at the end of the corridor. The second-year teacher's office was located at the eastern end of their floor, meaning that the classrooms on this floor were largely under the teacher's watchful eye, resulting in a relatively good level of discipline. Chen Qiusheng glanced at Wu Tong from the side. At some point, the girl straightened her back, her features delicate and refined, like pearls washed clean of dust, radiant and smooth, a stark contrast to her usual inconspicuous demeanor. You did very well on the test this time. Did you study hard over the summer? Chen Qiusheng began. Yes, Teacher Chen, I feel my foundation is weak, so I retake 6 science courses over the summer. It's great that you've realized this and learned to study hard. I'm very happy. Congratulations on getting first place in the grade on this baseline test. This was quite unexpected for the teacher. However, Chen Qiusheng, after all, had been a teacher for many years, and his complicated emotions had long since faded. Now, facing his students, he managed to smile, softening his usual serious expression. No matter what, it's a joyful thing for a student to do well on a test. I wasn't sensible before, and I caused the teacher a lot of worry. Wu Tong apologized to the teacher for her earlier impulsiveness. When she wasn't studying hard, the teacher had often talked to her and worried about her. He was a very good teacher. It's what a teacher should do. Chen Kexing, a straightforward person with no habit of beating around the bush, got straight to the point. Based on your results this time, you can be promoted to the top classes 1 or 2. As you know, our school's top classes have the best teachers, so they'll be better for you. The teachers there would also welcome you to transfer there. They'll have a talk with you in the next couple of days. Go home today and discuss the transfer with your family. The teacher respects your opinion. The top class? That was the place she had once imagined she'd finally break through, the place she'd thought about entering. However, times had changed, and she no longer held such a strong desire. Teacher Chen, rather than switching classes, I'd rather skip a grade and take the Gaokao early. If skipping isn't possible, I might try to get admitted through a competition. Wu Tong pondered for a moment before expressing her thoughts. This decision had come to her mind after she had mastered all her high school subjects. She went to school for the sole purpose of acquiring knowledge, not for the vain desire to relive her youthful high school days. Having mastered all the high school knowledge, there was no point in wasting another year. Education and book resources were scarce in a small county. Entering university a year early would expose her to a broader range of knowledge. Wherever her heart led, she would be in the prime of her youth. So, after making her decision, she created 2 alternative paths, which she could pursue simultaneously, providing both options for a balanced approach. To be honest, competitions were an unfamiliar field for Wu Tong. It was a game for geniuses, far removed from her previous experience. She had only just begun to explore it and needed further training. It wasn't a lifeline, just a backup plan. For her, the safest route is to take the college entrance examination early, and she will fight for it with the school. Skip a grade. Chen Kexing was a little stunned. Why would he have such an idea? Even if Wu Tong scored almost full marks in this baseline test, it was only a basic baseline test after all. Most of the test subjects were only high school knowledge, but based on this, you can't think that the college entrance examination is so easy. Yes, Teacher Chen, I am not proud and complacent because my test results were good. Wu Tong's expression was serious and solemn. I have completed all 6 science subjects in high school by self-study. Regarding this point, the teacher can test me at will, and I can accept it. Whether she can take the college entrance examination early will ultimately depend on the teacher's communication with the school leaders. She must first convince Teacher Chen. And the best way to convince him is to let the teacher verify her current level with his own eyes. Completed everything? Are you sure you didn't just go through all the high school textbooks? Chen Kexing raised his hand to check his watch. It was just the beginning of morning self-study. I heard that you always hand in your paper half of the time in advance in the exam room. For the Chinese paper, I can't even hand it in half of the time. Wu Tong smiled and nodded, but she was not too confident. She needed to practice more and accumulate more knowledge in Chinese. Her previous advantage subject has now become her weakest point. Wu Tong was also helpless. However, Chinese really requires time to accumulate. She can't do it in one go. Come on, I'll find you a paper. Try it. Let's see if it's a mule or a horse. Chen Kexing wanted to give his students a real feel for the situation, so he took a math paper from the 3rd grade. Come on, Wu Tong, are you sure you have finished studying all the high school math textbooks? Yes, Teacher Chen. Wu Tong nodded with certainty. Come, do this test and let the teacher see your level. Half an hour later, Wu Tong finished the test. He checked his answers and saw another perfect score. Chen Kexing felt truly enlightened. There's a famous saying that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. He'd taught for many years, and even when he occasionally had outstanding students, it was generally the 99% perspiration that contributed to their excellent grades. He'd seen students who initially didn't study hard, but then took to it and saw their grades soar, eventually getting into a prestigious university. But this student, after just 2 months of retaking the course during the summer vacation, had achieved a perfect score and even completed the high school material on his own, truly mastering it. It truly gave him a glimpse into the true nature of exceptional talent. Chapter 19, Explosion. Back to half an hour ago, Chen Kexing led Wu Tong into the office. Few teachers were on duty at the moment. The morning self-study teachers had all gone to the classrooms to supervise the class. There was no need for teachers to supervise morning reading, it wasn't time for them to start work yet, and the second-year science office was quiet. Chen Qiusheng asked Wu Tong to wait, then handed her a math test sheet, asking her to sit at his desk and work on it. With the intention of teaching Wu Tong a lesson, Chen Qiusheng had found this year's Gaokao, National College Entrance Examination, exam paper, which had just been released. Information wasn't readily available online these days, as it was later, so Gaokao papers weren't everywhere the moment the exams were finished. Information resources were readily available. The paper he had in his hands was a spare copy, specially prepared by a senior teacher for the current class. This year's Gaokao was easier than previous years, with very basic questions. However, to do well, one must thoroughly master the knowledge gained in 3 years of high school and achieve a high score. He wasn't deliberately trying to embarrass Wu Tong, he simply wanted her to understand that the Gaokao was a difficult exam and that there was no room for slacking off. Wu Tong took the paper and raised an eyebrow. Gaokao? She'd already gone through a lot of past exam questions, so this year's wouldn't be a problem either. After a quick glance, she picked up her pen and began working. Basic questions were now easy for Wu Tong, her eyes sifting through them. The answers were all in her head and pen. Inside the office, the only sound was the steady, uninterrupted patter of Wu Tong's pen, without a single stutter. This made Chen Qiusheng's heart race. Could this person actually do it? Whether or not a student could do it, a teacher could tell by their performance. He glanced forward. Only a few minutes had passed. She'd already finished the multiple-choice questions. The simple steps outlined on the scratch paper he'd provided proved Wu Tong wasn't just randomly filing in the blanks. Chen Qiusheng finally understood the astonishment of the invigilators, Zhang and Liu. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have imagined a student could solve the Gaokao exam as easily as solving 1 plus 1. Perhaps this was genius? A true genius? Chen Qiusheng was stunned for a moment, but when he came back to his senses, Wu Tong had already finished the test and handed it to him. Chen Qiusheng checked the time. It had only been a little over 20 minutes since he'd given the child the test. He was filled with mixed emotions. From last night until today, he'd been so upset for this child. He pulled out the answers he'd brought with him and double-checked them. He got all the multiple-choice questions right, all the fill-in-the-blank questions right, and all the essay questions right. This meant Chen Qiusheng had a perfect score on the Gaokao. It seemed like no one in the current senior year could match this speed and score. It was truly remarkable. Honestly, as a teacher, the thought of someone achieving a perfect score on the Gaokao through self-study was even more complex. Was the teacher useless, or was the student just too talented? He imagined any teacher witnessing this would be filled with doubts. With such results, if the child continued in the second year of high school, it would be a waste of their time. After thinking for a while, he pulled out another test paper from the desk. The full score is 150. You have mastered the knowledge learned by yourself very well. This is the comprehensive science test paper for this year's college entrance examination. The teacher originally planned to teach you the knowledge points involved in the class as if they were real questions. You can slowly study and get familiar with the question types. The teacher will communicate your situation and ideas with the school leaders. Okay, Teacher Chen? Wu Tong spread out the test paper and continued to do it fluently with the paper and pen she had used for math. These questions were no longer difficult for her. In order to achieve her wish, Wu Tong has been doing her best since she entered the office. The comprehensive science test paper has a lot of questions, so she has to speed up and try to finish it within 40 minutes before the class officially starts, so as to give the teacher more proof to the school. Chen Qiusheng left the office, took out his mobile phone, and dialed Duan Hong's number. Director Duan, it's me, old Chen from class 7. Wu Tong, the kid in our class, wants to skip a grade and take the college entrance exam early. I just had her do this year's math exam paper. It took her 24 minutes, and she got a perfect score again. She's already self-taught all the high school courses and has a pretty good grasp of them. The grade group leader is now also called the grade director. When discussing matters formally, Chen Qiusheng addresses the more formal title. Really, Duan Hong could imagine that this student had self-studied in advance, having gotten a perfect score on this baseline test, but the fact that he had self-taught all the high school courses still surprised him. It's true, I saw it with my own eyes. Are you in the office now? How about I bring the test paper to you? The elite class is in the building in front, And the teacher's office is also over there. She's doing this year's science exam in my office right now. I originally wanted her to look at the question types and get a feel for it, but I see she's at it again. If she continues at the same pace as she did with math, it probably won't take too long before we know how well she's mastered science. If she can score high on the science exam, then the child has the potential to skip a grade. As a teacher, it's rare to encounter such a special student, but as a role model, it's our responsibility to help. While the two teachers were conferring, the second grade class was in an uproar. Class 7, grade 12, was even more excited after Chen Qiasheng and Wu Tong left the classroom. Those in the front row, with the best vantage points, lifted the ban and expressed their shock. Oh my God. We're going to die. 5 out of 6 subjects, and a perfect score in Chinese. Is this going to make us die? When did our class get such a brilliant student? It's only just started, and he's already blowing up. Wu Tong. When did Wu Tong become so impressive? Wasn't he only in the 30s or 40s before? 733? That's a score a human got? Are you sure the test paper isn't magical? Is this supposed to be okay? 733 is okay, Zhang Shumi exclaimed in shock at the news from the front row, looking at the empty seat next to her. Inspired by Wu Tong's performance, most of the homeroom teachers entered the classroom early and began lecturing with full force. In the top class, Duan Hong's face was dark. Did you have a great summer vacation? Look at what you all scored on the exams. The top student is not in our class. Do you know how much he scored? He got full marks in 5 subjects, 133 in Chinese, and 733 in total. How about you? The highest score didn't even reach 700. What a huge gap there is between us. Let's not talk about other subjects for now. Let's just talk about math. It's such a basic question. How could none of you get full marks? What were you doing? Were you sleepwalking through the exam? With your attitude, can you really deliver on the college entrance examination battlefield? It's understandable that other classes didn't get full marks, but what about you? What knowledge point did we not learn or touch upon? We all had summer vacation, but they studied hard and got full marks of 733 in 5 subjects. How about you? Where have you all regressed? Chapter 20 Purple Star. That morning, all the sophomores were stunned by the news of a perfect score of 733 in all 5 subjects. After Duan Hong finished his bombardment and went out to answer the phone, the already savagely criticized class was in an uproar. Who is this inhuman who got such an incredible score? If it wasn't from our class, could it be from class 2? We're going to have a tough time. Old Chen next door will probably be laughing his ass off. It can't be from the ordinary class down there, right? If it was from an ordinary class, wouldn't our class be in for a surprise attack? I think those are the ones who are most worried. Someone pointed at the students who had previously topped the grade. This was a dark horse that soared, leaving some in the dust. After morning self-study, all the students didn't rush out for breakfast as usual. Instead, most of them rushed to the honor roll in the middle of the teaching building. When they saw the name, highlighted in bold, topping the list, everyone was unfamiliar with it. But the perfect scores that followed dazzled the students surrounding them. Truly, there was someone out there who had achieved such a formidable score. The second-place finisher's score of 682 would have been a respectable score in the past, firmly in first place and a good 10 points ahead of the next 2. Yet, they were still 51 points behind this one, a yawning gap. Honestly, they longed to visit Class 7 to see what this incredible student looked like. Were her scores just as impressive? Many people acted on this thought, making a detour through Class 7 to take a look. Some who knew the class even went straight over to ask for information. However, they were to be disappointed. Meanwhile, Wu Tong was still diligently working in the teacher's office. Duan Hong, without sending teacher Chen a trip, arranged for the students' morning self-study and headed straight over. Old Chen Qiasheng and Duan Hong nodded in greeting, handing the paper to Duan Hong. Director Duan, this is Wu Tong's recent math paper. He's still working on the science section. I just checked in, and he's almost done. Duan Hong quickly scanned the paper. He'd personally seen and practiced this year's Gaokao questions, and the answers were still memorized. Compared to Chen Qiasheng, his background as a pure math teacher made him more aware of the quality of this paper. Full marks, absolutely perfect, especially for the later questions. The solutions were logically clear, rigorous, and precise, with no deductions. A perfect paper indeed. Furthermore, the solutions to 2 of the questions involved a different approach, more concise than the traditional solutions in the standard answers. This proved that Wu Tong, in his work, had truly mastered what he'd learned in high school, integrating it with his own understanding and adapting to changing circumstances, achieving the 4 words different paths, same goal, easier said than done. Old Chen, if all students were like this, wouldn't we teachers have to take a back seat? Duen Hong wiped the slight sweat from his face. The scorching heat of the autumn heat was nothing compared to the burning heat within him. Was their school a stroke of genius? Everyone in the senior year gave their all, yet no one got a perfect score, and this kid got a perfect score because the test was only worth 150, and this perfect score, achieved with just summer self-study. Such talent is truly astonishing. The disparity in reality can sometimes be truly heartbreaking. Their school isn't a top-tier institution. Most of the truly top students are scooped up by the city before the high school entrance exam, or their families have connections to transfer them to other schools in the city or province. The students' qualifications are still somewhat lacking, and the teachers here are literally tearing every detail apart, trying to get the students to fully absorb and apply every bit of knowledge. Every teacher in their generation puts in a tremendous amount of effort to achieve good results. I'm really surprised that he can master something so thoroughly through self-study. Is it the same for the top students in those top schools? The concentration of top students in those good schools is really enviable, who says not? I just saw that kids work on the science and chemistry section, and it was exactly right. Chen Qiasheng nodded. He was the first person to discover this, so how could he not understand? From the math and chemistry, it can be basically confirmed that his students' words and deeds are consistent. He didn't brag. When he said he had mastered high school knowledge, he really had a thorough understanding. I'm sorry, we can't teach this kid anything, but I'm also happy that this kid is from our school. Duen Hong breathed a sigh of relief. Although this student couldn't transfer to his class, at least if he maintained his grades, their school would have a student who could get into a top university in the college entrance examination. I'll take this child's comprehensive science exam and mark it later. We'll meet with the Dean of Studies and the principal this morning to discuss a plan for his development. If their school doesn't seize this gifted talent, it would be like the school's leadership is completely out of their minds, waiting for him to bring glory to other schools. Teacher, I finished my comprehensive science exam too. Wu Tong paused, putting down her pen and checking the time. It was exactly 7:30. She had finished in 36 minutes, with 10 minutes left before the first class. She stood up and handed the exam to Chen Qiasheng, who had entered. Hello, Teacher Duen. Meanwhile, teachers from other subjects began to enter the office one after another. Those who recognized Wu Tong couldn't help but smile and greet her. Wu Tong greeted each one, allowing the other teachers in the office to officially meet the top student in their grade who had so shocked them last night. Wu Tong's Chinese teacher, also surnamed Wu, raised an eyebrow and smirked at Wu Tong. Wu Tong, what's wrong with me? You got perfect scores in all other subjects, but you're leaving my Chinese class halfway up the mountain. Teacher Wu, I'll work harder. Wu Tong smiled sheepishly. Teacher Wu, 133 isn't bad for Chinese, and not only is it good, it's an excellent score. Class 5's Chinese teacher laughed in support. You're putting a bit of a hurdle on Wu Tong by asking him to get full marks on the Chinese test. I looked at Wu Tong's Chinese test, and he got every point he deserved. He has a very good foundation. Chinese comprehension and composition require gradual accumulation of understanding and practice. That's right, Teacher Wu. Teacher Chen, if you're still not satisfied with the score, all our classes are open to you. We sincerely welcome Wu. The other teachers followed suit, seemingly openly trying to steal his students' attention. Go away, don't even think about it, don't make trouble. Chen Qiasheng waved his hands. The faces of these people were simply unbearable to look at. The good seedling belonged to their class. As long as Wu Tong didn't want to leave, no one could snatch her away. Wu Tong, go back to the classroom to rest and eat something. The class will officially start soon. Teacher Wu, as a woman, was more attentive. Thinking that the child had been dragged to the office by Mr. Chen early in the morning and probably had no time to eat breakfast, she took out a pack of milk and 2 loaves of bread from the drawer and stuffed them into Wu Tong's hands. These were the snacks she usually had when she worked overtime and didn't have time to eat. Thank you, teacher. Chapter 21 Special. Wu Tong returned to the classroom, only to notice that her classmates, some overtly and some covertly, were casting inquiring and complex glances at her. Knowing what was going on, Wu Tong didn't take it seriously and went straight back to her seat. 3 classmates in her row began the performance. Seeing Wu Tong, they stood up early and pulled up their stools to allow her to get to the innermost section. "Thank you," Wu Tong nodded in thanks. "Sir, you're so polite. Please take a seat and share your experience with us. How did you get such an incredible score this time?" Zhang Shumi was the first to ask. She was still amazed. They'd been friends for a while, and after just one summer, they'd shot straight to the top. She'd just glanced at the draft paper on Wu Tong's desk. The math formulas were so dazzling she couldn't recognize it. It was definitely not what they were currently studying. Academic overlord wasn't enough to describe this monstrous creature. He had ascended to the highest level of prominence. She'd been so blind she hadn't realized her deskmate was a hidden genius. The students at the desks in front and behind her couldn't help but look up, curiously glancing at Wu Tong. "Read more and do more exercises? I felt my foundation wasn't solid enough during the summer, and I didn't understand a lot of the questions. So I retook 6 science subjects and reread all the supplementary textbooks I'd bought." It was quite rewarding. Wu Tong spoke matter-of-factly, but her progress was a bit slow, so there was no need to elaborate. She'd only really devoted the past month or so to studying, so her experience wouldn't be applicable to others. "I usually stay in class with everyone, so everyone can see what I'm doing. During breaks, I usually preview the next lesson," Wu Tong said, pulling out her Chinese textbook and beginning a review. Perseverance pays off. She deeply understood the importance of the college entrance exam and awakening memories of past lives. It would be an honor for her to have a positive impact on her classmates. Hearing Wu Tong's words, everyone remembered that it was indeed the case. Since the start of the school year, Wu Tong had been seen with a book in hand most days, either reading, writing, or doing exercises. It was indeed just as she'd said. Zhang Shumi spread her hands. Everyone else had a similar mentality. What did that mean? It meant everyone had different mindsets. A genius was a genius. If they wanted to study, they just read more and practice more, and their achievements skyrocketed to the top. They, on the other hand, only studied harder and earned a few more points or a few more places. And now, they were still curiously gossiping about Wu Tong starting to study. It was just that those who were smarter than them also worked harder, so they deserved full marks and top spots. With that in mind, there was no point in gossiping. They should just study diligently, prepare when necessary, review when necessary, and score a few more points. Who knows, with a little more practice, they too could make a run for it and achieve even better scores. With the exception of a few, most students had a strong desire to learn. Inspired by Wu Tong's example, many aspired to achieve the same breakthrough and success. Of course, there were also those with narrow minds, like Fu Jiajia, the English class representative in the second row from the middle. Hypocrisy. Fu Jiajia poked at her notebook in frustration. She used to compete with a class monitor, Lin Yang, for first or second place in the class. In the grade rankings, she'd be in the 50s or 60s on a good day, hovering around 100 on a bad day. She'd always been proud of her grades. No girl in the class could match her. This summer, she hadn't spent all her time playing. She'd remembered to review. She'd thought she'd surpass Lin Yang and become the top student, impressing her classmates and sharing her experience later. She was still struggling with the question, was it because she'd had so much fun that she'd been so worried about the exams and unexpectedly done so well? Or was it because she'd planned all her summer studies so that others would copy her and receive praise from the teacher? Who would have thought that when the results came out today, she'd done just fine, with a total score of over 600, placing her in 83rd in the grade. But with class monitor Lin Yang, who was 70, ahead of her, and Wu Tong, who scored perfect scores in all 5 subjects, her score was nothing compared to them. She couldn't even surpass Wu Tong's lowest score, Chinese, at 130. She was jealous and wished that all the honors belonged to her. She thought Wu Tong had been pretending before and probably didn't study hard in the exams just to attract attention now. Other people's envy, admiration, curiosity, jealousy, all kinds of complicated emotions, to Wu Tong, were just passing clouds, and she didn't need to spend time to pay attention to them. She opened the book and entered the study state. What attracted her most now was still the mastery and improvement of knowledge. The more she studied, the more Wu Tong felt that she still lacked a lot. The morning classes were basically spent handing out papers and explaining the papers. Every teacher who came to teach Class 7 of Grade 2 praised Wu Tong in the same way. Such consistent special treatment had made the students in Class 7 of Grade 2 so accustomed to it. Before class began, the physics teacher bluntly stated, "Students Wu Tong, do whatever you want. Everyone else, listen carefully. If any of you get a perfect score next time, I'll treat you fairly and give you absolute freedom." He, along with the homeroom teacher and the biology teacher, had participated in reviewing Wu Tong's comprehensive science paper before class, and witnessed another miracle. This year's comprehensive science exam had a perfect score, including perfect scores in math, and Chinese and English were likely to be equally impressive. This meant that if Wu Tong had taken the Gaokao this year, he would have been a contender for the top spot, not just a place in university. Wu Tong had already mastered all the high school material, so they should waste her time with the basics today, let her plan her own learning. They couldn't teach such a student, but they could still offer absolute freedom. Wu Tong held her forehead with her hand, smiling helplessly, thanking the teacher for her kindness. She pulled out the advanced mathematics book she was studying, flipped to the 3rd chapter, and spread out her draft paper, continuing her deductions. Her efforts had paid off. Zhang Shumi glanced at the cover curiously. Advanced mathematics, is this a college textbook? She seemed to have heard her cousin say that they had failed the advanced mathematics test and were tortured beyond measure. And now, the advanced mathematics textbook that made college students miserable was in the hands of her classmate, and the deductions were smooth. Let her also breathe in the celestial aura of the academic god, and make steady progress in mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology. The English teacher directly gave Wu Tong a copy of this year's English college entrance examination paper. Today is mainly to revise the test papers. Wu Tong, do this. Wu Tong did the math and comprehensive science tests on the college entrance examination paper, and was amazed to get full marks on both. She also wanted to see how well this classmate had mastered high school English. Other students, cheer up. How many times have I explained these knowledge points in class? How could you still make mistakes? Aren't you ashamed? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22 Discussion. While the students were in class, a discussion was also taking place in the principal's office of Xinchang No. 1 High School. After listening to the report represented by Duan Hong, and learning that their school had produced a talented young man, the principal of Xinchang No. 1 High School, Xiao Mingwei, the dean of studies, and the vice principal were naturally very happy. Such a good student must be well cultivated. The student means to skip a grade and take the college entrance examination in advance, right? After a brief communication, several school leaders reached a consensus. Xiao Mingwei made a direct arrangement. This Saturday is the first monthly exam for the 3rd year of high school, right? Arrange for Wu Tong to take a formal exam as a 3rd-year student. If the results are still so outstanding, then approve Wu Tong's application for skipping a grade. If you want to skip a grade, you still have to have a real test. Tuition and miscellaneous fees will be waived, and a refund will be arranged for this semester's fees. Participation in the senior year monthly exam will be an incentive, and scholarships will be distributed. Wu Tong still wants to compete, right? The provincial preliminary round for the math competition is in mid-October, right? Give her a spot. If she excels, the school will generously reward her. Competitions have always been a competition for geniuses. Their school's best result was only 2nd place at the provincial level, and most were eliminated at the first round of the preliminary round. Therefore, the school simply encourages students to try and doesn't recommend excessive pursuit. This year's quota hasn't been allocated yet, so giving a spot to the top student in the grade is perfect. Previously, the quotas were randomly assigned to students who ranked high in each subject. If this student truly has the talent, he'll secure 1st place at the provincial level, and he'll personally go to the Education Bureau to secure a double reward for her. Whether it's the county's cultural and educational achievements or their performance evaluations, teaching performance is paramount. If they can pull off this year's high school, no one else will be able to match the teaching achievements of this year's high school. As long as they can achieve good results, supporting and rewarding students is the best investment. It's also the best promotion ladder for school leaders like them. Once the official plan was finalized, Chen Qiusheng immediately notified Wu Tong. Exams? Then let the storm come even harder. She wasn't afraid of exams anymore. Okay, thank you, teacher. I'm sorry to trouble you again. Knowing the requirements, Wu Tong felt confident and determined to fulfill them. It's a great honor for me to have the opportunity to trouble you. Don't slack off in your studies. Maintain your grades. Peking University, Huqing University, and other key domestic universities will only choose based on your preferences, so admission won't be a problem for you, Chen Qiusheng earnestly instructed. The school will be organizing a math competition training session soon. It's in the Teaching and Research Office in Minghu Building near the playground. You and Lin Yang will be attending during evening study time. It will focus on competition problem-solving techniques and explanations and practice with past exam questions. You can go and listen, okay, teacher? I'll keep working hard and prepare well. Wu Tong promised with a serious nod. Go ahead, the teacher believes in you. After school at noon, Wu Tong met up with Jin Xin, who was waiting for her, and Zhale, who was also going the same way. She was going to her grandfather's house for lunch today. Jin Yu and Wu Jingzhong both had jobs, so to ease their burden, and out of concern for their granddaughter who wouldn't be able to come home for dinner, Wu Tong ate most of her lunch at the Jin family's house during the school day. She would only go home for dinner if either teacher Jin or comrade Wu was free, having already cooked at home. Twang, I heard there's a freak sophomore in your class. He got a perfect score of 733 in all 5 subjects on the exam, Zhao Lei asked curiously, riding his bicycle. Jin Xin immediately responded, how could someone get that score? I heard he could even get a perfect score on the college entrance exam? Old Jin and the others looked at us like we were idiots today. News spread quickly at school. Chen Qiusheng's college entrance exam paper was from the senior class. Wu Tong had skipped a grade, and since the vice principal was also the head of the senior class, word of Wu Tong's accomplishments naturally spread throughout the senior class. Thinking about the fact that the students they cultivated with all their heart and soul could not even pass the exams as well as the sophomores who studied on their own during the summer vacation, all the senior high school teachers suddenly felt disgusted with their students and were particularly displeased with them. He doesn't even realize that we can compare with such an inhuman guy. The senior high school students were overwhelmed with books and exercises every day, and had no time to go downstairs to look at the honor roll. They had no idea that they were asking the real culprit. Brother, I'm a human. Wu Tong glanced at Jin Xin. They were half-blood relatives, so if she wasn't a human, what was he? Yes, you are a human, Tong. Of course you are a human, Jin Xin replied casually. He was about to say that he was not scolding her, but suddenly realized in shock, Tong, it was you. He suddenly remembered that Wu Tong had read the brilliant achievements of the sophomores and juniors in mathematics in 2 days. This was not impossible. Zhalei's hands trembled with fear at Jin Xin's speculation, his grip on the bicycle's handlebars nearly dropping. He slammed on the brakes. Hey, sister, we shouldn't scare people. Scaring people can be truly terrifying. What? Can't it be me? Wu Tong raised an eyebrow, daring to express her doubt. The little brother would have 2 more exams today. She'd spent the past 2 weeks integrating high school knowledge, and special training for the little brother was now on the agenda. Sure, I can do it. If anyone can't, my sister can too, Jin Xin, with the alertness of a small animal, responded with immediate reflex and decisiveness. On the way home, the 2 brothers were in a state of euphoria. Jin Xin's, little sister was the one who had scored an incredible score. They felt the future seemed bleak, as if they were about to ascend to heaven. Once they arrived at the Jin family's house, dinner was served. The Jin's parents invited the 2 children to eat. Today, Jin Yuan was watching from the store and wouldn't be back for dinner. What's wrong? Sleepwalking? Just like frostbitten eggplants. Su Mifang emerged from the kitchen carrying yam and pork rib soup. She glanced at Jin Xin, who was following Wu Tong with his shoulder tucked in, and couldn't help but glare. What had gotten into him? As they say, a mother knows a child best. Tong, Jin Xin perked up, about to exaggerate Wu Tong's achievements. Wu Tong slowed down, stepped on Jin Xin's foot, and took over the conversation. Brother, he's had a bit of a shock. I'll tell you more later, okay? Tong, drink some soup to moisten yourself first. If your son hadn't gotten into trouble at school, Su Mifang wouldn't have pressed the issue. The sibling dispute was a matter for the siblings to resolve. After dinner, they had an hour's break. Afterward, they went upstairs. "Brother, come on, let's discuss something," Wu Tong said solemnly, pulling up a stool and sitting at the desk with Jinzin. "What's wrong, Tong Tong?" Jinzin paused as he prepared to turn the page at Wu Tong's expression. He was already feeling energized and ready to continue working hard. Although he had been somewhat aware that this day would come, when he would witness Tong Tong's impressive performance, he hadn't expected it to happen so soon or so excitingly. "I asked the school today to skip my senior year and take the college entrance exam early, in the same year as you. I'm quite interested in math and I think I'll pursue research in this area. I looked it up, and the best math program in China is at Kyoto University. That's my goal." Wu Tong carefully outlined her plans, then softened her tone. "Brother, you said I've barely left our county before, and I'm unfamiliar with Kyoto. Honestly, I'm a little timid. Brother, why don't you and I apply to the same university? You can look after me and prevent me from getting bullied." Right, she needed to give her brother more motivation. He wanted to do well on the exam, but he hadn't performed well in his previous life. This time, she rolled up her sleeves and took the exam herself to help him realize his dream. Jinzin scratched his head, a look of horror on his face. "Oh, sister, Jingda, you really dare to dream of this? This goal seems a bit high. I will break it. We should have some self-knowledge. With your grades, you can pick any school you want, and it won't be a problem to go to any school. With my grades, I will try my best to see if I can touch the line and see if there is any school that wants me. Hey, brother, as long as you want and cooperate, the rest of the tutoring will be my responsibility. There's still 1 year left, let's go for it. Brother, are you going to cooperate on your own? Or will the whole family suppress you with force?" Wu Tong smiled half coquettishly and half threateningly. She accompanied the brother to review, and she didn't believe that she couldn't send the brother to a good university next year. Then give it a try. Jinzin felt that if he cooperated on his own, he would be treated much better than being suppressed by force. He never doubted Tong Tong's ability to call for armed suppression. With Tong Tong's perfect scores in English, math, and science on the college entrance examination, he was tutoring him. With such a high salary, he would definitely jump up a little. He had originally planned to study hard, and now it was just an additional burden. As a man, he gritted his teeth and persevered. The goal of getting into the same university as Tong Tong was a bit too high, but if he tried his best, he could get into the same city as Tong Tong, right? That's so nice, brother. While we have some time, I'll give you a lecture starting with math. Wu Tong smiled and pulled out a piece of draft paper. He began by talking about the entire high school math structure, and then introduced the branches and trunks. Time was limited at noon, so he helped the boy review the assembly part first. Once on her ship, the boy would forget about getting off until he reached the other side. Chapter 23 Mathematical Olympiad. On Tuesday, the excitement caused by Wu Tong's perfect scores in 5 subjects had subsided slightly. After dinner, returning to school, class monitor Lin Yang approached Wu Tong. Teacher Chen said you'll also be participating in the Mathematical Olympiad. There's an Olympiad training session tonight. Want to go together? Okay. Wu Tong closed the advanced mathematics course he was holding, grabbed his bound draft paper and pencil case, and stood up to leave the classroom with Lin Yang. Each school building has a unique name. The building their class was in was called the Boxu Building. Minghu Building was the building in front of them, and in front of that was their school's playground. The Minghu Building teaching and research section was temporarily used as an Olympiad training session. By the time Wu Tong and Lin Yang arrived, most of the students participating in the Olympiad had already arrived. The class wasn't large, only about 10 aside from the very few who were genuinely interested in the Olympiad. The vast majority were selected from students who excelled in math, primarily from the top-performing classes in classes 1 and 2, whose classes were located in the same building. When Wu Tong entered, he was a complete stranger. The number of top math students in the school doesn't fluctuate much. Many of them have participated in the Mathematical Olympiad since their freshman year, and most of them are basically acquainted with each other. When they saw Lin Yang coming in with her, all the students realized that this must be Wu Tong, who had been famous these past few days and had perfect scores in 5 subjects. Lin Yang was from class 7, and the only new face who could come with him and suddenly join them was her. It was only the 3rd week of school, and the new freshmen who had just enrolled in the freshman year had not yet made their debut. The substitute teacher for the Mathematical Olympiad training was Mr. Duan Hong, whom Wu Tong had already dealt with. He had arrived early and was sitting at the podium. "Wu Tong is here." He saw Wu Tong come in and couldn't help but smile and greeted Wu Tong over. With a glance, he saw the book in Wu Tong's hand. He took a closer look. Advanced Mathematics? Duan Hong was stunned. That's right. For students who have fully mastered high school mathematics and want to explore higher knowledge, there's nothing wrong with reading this book. Can you understand it? Not bad. It was a little difficult at first, but I've been building my logic over the past 2 days and it's slowly gotten better. Wu Tong nodded. Her teachers rarely paid her any attention now, save for the occasional in-depth lecture where the class couldn't answer a question. The classroom rarely interfered with her learning. With her free time, she devoted more time to it. She'd already gotten through most of the advanced math book and expected to have a complete grasp of it by this week. It's a good thing you can get into it. Take your time. There's a big difference between high school math and university math, Duan Hong encouraged Wu Tong. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me or any of the math teachers at school. They'll be happy to help you. Thinking that Wu Tong had already begun studying university math textbooks, while the rest of the class was still struggling with high school problems, he couldn't help but want to give them a little encouragement. He introduced Wu Tong to the already arrived class, identifying him as Wu Tong. This is Wu Tong. You should all be familiar with him. He's the only one who got a perfect score on the math test this time. He even took this year's college entrance exam on the day the results were released. I can tell you, he still got a perfect score. There's always someone better than you. You should learn from Wu Tong. Don't think you're the best in the world just because you're just a little bit better at math. Got it, old Duan? Comparing us to such a superstar, don't you feel guilty? Anyone who could get into this class had good grades, and naturally had a close and friendly relationship with the teacher. The cheerful one couldn't help but shout mischievously. That's right, the others followed suit. How could they, the ordinary students, compare themselves to a genius who could get perfect scores on the college entrance exam, who had mastered all the high school knowledge, and was already studying university textbooks? Old Owen really thought too highly of them. I think you guys are just too idle. You're all good at talking. Take a practice test today. Duan Hong was almost amused by this group of incompetent people. Wu Tong, find a seat first. Today, we'll do some practice tests for the mathematical Olympiad. There's a difference between a competition and a regular exam. There were quite a few empty seats in the teaching and research room. Lin Yang had his own place, so Wu Tong randomly chose an empty seat in the middle. Duan Hong began to hand out the papers. The boy in the front row turned and passed her a paper. His glasses couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes, and his face still had a bit of baby fat. He greeted her with a playful smile. Boss, I'm Sun Zhao from Class 1. Please take care of me. Wu Tong recognized him as the one who had first spoken up, asking if Teacher Duan was being too ungrateful. Wu Tong from Class 7, please take care of me. Academic odd. If she remembered correctly, this guy was the one known as the Little Prince of Science. He seemed to often get full marks in math. The guy who got 148 in math this time, was he? His science scores were either perfect or close to perfect, but his Chinese and English were lagging behind, hovering around 101. He was also among the top students in the grade. As the test papers were handed out, all the students began to concentrate on the papers in their hands. They were all top students at the top of the grade, so they had some mental control. Wu Tong examined the paper in her hands. There weren't many questions, only 4 major ones. But they covered almost everything, including plane geometry, algebra, number theory, and combinatorics. Compared to the basic papers she had taken before, the difficulty was completely different. The first question was a plane geometry question. In a acute triangle ABC, the altitude CE on AB and the altitude BD on AC intersect at point H. The circle with diameter DE intersects AB and AC at points F and G respectively. FG intersects A at point K given BC equals 25, BD equals 20, and B equals 7. Find the length of AK. Wu Tong had come across a few real-world problems in this area during the summer, but not many. After successfully completing her high school self-study and considering participating in the mathematical Olympiad, she began to keep an eye out for practice questions in this area. Time was limited, so she hadn't yet dabbled in them much. She was only just beginning to understand the Olympiad. However, the high school Olympiad ultimately tested high school knowledge. Even though Wu Tong hadn't yet developed an Olympiad mindset and wasn't familiar with the approach taken, having thoroughly mastered the high school curriculum and advanced her studies, it all came down to solving the problem, a task she wasn't afraid of. After carefully reading the problem, Wu Tong had some ideas in mind. She scribbled a few words on a piece of scratch paper to organize her thoughts. She began writing, given BC equals 25, AC, BD equals CE, AB AK equals 9, 24/25 equals 216/25. She easily solved the first problem. It was a warm-up exercise and not difficult for Wu Tong. She spent more time writing out her solution than thinking about it. Wu Tong then moved on to the second problem, which consisted of 2 questions, each more challenging than the last. The first time Wu Tong read the problem, he was still a little confused, a rare state of mind in recent times. After repeated readings and careful reflection, he finally grasped the essence of the problem. The rapidly swirling knowledge points in his mind connected, forming a solution that he mapped out one by one. He tackled the second problem once again, his complex process unfolding in the rustling of his pen. Most of the students were still struggling with the first problem, searching for a solution. The sound of Wu Tong's coherent writing was particularly noticeable in the quiet classroom. The others glanced at him with near awe and envy. He'd already finished the second problem? They hadn't even grasped the complete solution for the first problem. How could a genius be so formidable? Everyone raced to think. If they delayed any further, the master would hand in his paper before they even finished the first one. They had heard of Wu Tong's habit of turning in half the time early. Chapter 24 Dimensionality Reduction Attack. With each successive problem, Wu Tong became increasingly adept, his pen proving unstoppable. He mastered 4 challenging real-world exams. Problem 3's main challenge lay in the computational complexity. Every step required precision, otherwise a single mistake would lead to a series of errors. Wu Tong wrote over 2 pages to complete the proof. Problem 4 was the key question of the 4, involving concepts that resembled university-level problems, yet required high school knowledge. Wu Tong worked through the problem step by step, ultimately arriving at a proof. It's easy to see that at least one of the equations is not 1, so let, then 1, thus the conclusion holds. The same logic applies to case 2, and so the conclusion holds. After completing the 4 major problems, Wu Tong double-checked them, confirming they were correct, and estimated his time. It must have taken nearly 50 minutes, a rare high school problem that Wu Tong could devote so much time to. Mathematical Olympiads are truly extraordinary. Such a challenge is quite enjoyable. Wu Tong paused, stretched his wrists, and gently stood up, handing the paper to the podium. Finished? Let me see. Duan Hong, who had just come up from his rounds, sat down at the podium, picked up his red pen, and began to mark the papers. Just now, when he was making his rounds, he saw that this child was doing quite well, making much more progress than the others. First question, correct. Second question, correct. Third question, correct. And the last question, correct again. Duan Hong wrote down a big 180, his heart filled with excitement. He already knew Wu Tong was good at math, but Wu Tong still exceeded his expectations. The training class had been going on for a while, and those who should have been screened out had already been screened out. The remaining students were all elite students with some talent. The papers he handed out this time were real questions from the second provincial competition. The question types were classic and the knowledge points were all comprehensive. He thought these questions would be difficult for Wu Tong. After all, Wu Tong had not had much exposure to Olympiad mathematics before. A perfect score in math didn't mean Wu Tong would do well in the Olympiad. He didn't expect Wu Tong, let alone the students in his class who'd had some Olympiad training since junior high, or even a year at most, to be able to solve all the problems. He simply wanted them to do their best, to expand their thinking as much as possible. He planned to focus on analysis and explanation in the training sessions over the next few days. This year, several students were quite talented, and Duan Hong was hoping they'd win second or third place at the provincial level. As for first place, that was a luxury, a longing pursuit for him. The second round of the provincial competition typically lasted 2.5 hours, and many competitors couldn't even finish within the allotted time, let alone submit their papers early. Wu Tong, however, had just checked the time and had only taken 47 minutes, scoring full marks on all of them. It was a speed and quality that even teachers like him, who had spent their entire lives teaching math, couldn't possibly match. He'd spent a long time collecting these problems, and the possibility that Wu Tong had actually done them was practically zero. Moreover, such a complicated derivation process would be dizzying for most people. Without understanding, even copying would be wrong, not to mention memorizing the answers by rote. Is their school going to break the zero record and win the provincial first prize? Duan Hong's eyes gleamed, and he suppressed his excitement. This classmate Wu Tong once again gave him hope of a miracle. Another full score. Classmate Wu Tong, have you really never been exposed to Olympiad mathematics before? How difficult do you think the questions are? Duan Hong suppressed his surprise and asked for confirmation. Looking at this score, it is really hard to imagine that this is a monster score that someone who is new to the Olympiad can get. No, there may be a few such questions in the supplementary textbooks I used to do, so I have seen them before. This is the first time she has actually participated in the Olympiad and done Olympiad math problems. The difficulty of the questions is okay, not too difficult. It did not exceed her knowledge range, leaving her at a loss. For her, it was not a difficult problem. These questions were just enough for her to ponder, but not too much to worry about. With her accumulated knowledge and practice, her mental processing skills gradually developed. Now, many questions seemed relatively simple to her, the answers easily apparent at a glance. Huh? The students in the audience, tormented by these difficult questions, gasped in shock. Is this a true academic genius? Such incredible skill, such a terrifying one. Those who finished quickly only made it to the second question, many still barely grasping the second question's underlying thought process, while this master had already completed all the questions, achieving full marks. There's no harm without comparison. Comparing yourself to others is truly infuriating. They shed bitter tears, begging the academic genius to show mercy and stop the taunting. Tonight's assignment is this paper. You finished early. Do you want to go home early or stay here to study? The students in the front row couldn't help but grin. Listen, when had old Duan's tone become so gentle, so considerate? Go home early? They weren't being extra class, which was Mr. Duan's mercy. Teacher Duan, are there any more problems? I need more practice. Wu Tong went back to study, so she didn't want to enjoy this special treatment and left early. She had just finished something interesting, and wanted to take advantage of the momentum to do more problems. It's a good thing for students to want more problems. Not only do they have them prepared, but even if they haven't, they should be prepared immediately. Teachers are most happy to see students who are both talented and hardworking. For students like Wu Tong, ordinary problems are meaningless. Duan Hong pulled out several A4 sheets of densely printed problems from the lesson plan on the desk and handed them to Wu Tong, saying, "Here are the real questions from the national competitions over the years. Try them first." These were treasures he had painstakingly collected over the years, but he didn't use them often. Students from Xinchang No. 1 High School couldn't even achieve first prize at the provincial level, let alone the CMO national competition, which was said to be beyond their reach. He usually selected classic examples to broaden the horizons of top students and competition candidates. Small towns have limited educational resources, so teachers like them are trying their best to help students gain more knowledge. Okay, thank you, Teacher Duan. Wu Tong took the test paper with both hands. These are good things that can't be found in ordinary places. This is not the future, and all kinds of reference books are flying around. It's not easy for her to find these real test papers. She returned to her seat with a smile on her face, continued to read the test papers, and started to deduce and calculate. They already felt that these provincial competition questions were as difficult as climbing to the sky, and their faces were gloomy. Others were happy to get the national competition questions. The audience couldn't help but be distracted. They looked up and glanced at Wu Tong's students, and they were shocked beyond words. I had only heard about Wu Tong's reputation in the past 2 days, and it didn't seem that great. But when they were in the same environment and did the same test paper, the comparison was really shocking. As expected, there is no false reputation. Such a genius is so powerful that he is not a human being. I didn't make any move before because I was too lazy to make an effort to compete with him. Hurry up, other students. Wu Tong has already finished a test, and got full marks. We still have over an hour left. If you don't hurry up and wait any longer, Wu Tong might have finished double the amount of questions before you've even finished yours. Are you planning to hand in a blank paper and make a fool of yourself? Duan Hong glared at the distracted others with a look of dismay. The other contestants, except Wu Tong, rolled their eyes inwardly. Old Duan, that's too much. How could they possibly compete with such an inhuman being? A gloomy mood gripped everyone. The provincial competition was already so difficult, and the national competition questions would be several levels higher. If they were to do them, they probably wouldn't even understand the questions. Meanwhile, the academic genius was working with great joy. The gap between them was as vast as the Himalayas. That was a height they dared not even dream of. It was a pity that they had all been so proud before, proud that their grades were good enough for the county, and even comparable to those in the city. But now, looking back, they were truly frogs in a well. Chapter 25 Admiration. Ding, ding, ding. The bell rang for the end of the evening study session. The training class had no special schedule, so it followed the evening study schedule. From 6:30 to 9 o'clock, exactly 2.5 hours. Duan Hong was making his rounds, and when he came to Wu Tong's desk, he saw she had already turned a page and was working on problem number 7. Draft papers, densely scribbled with deductive formulas and procedures, lay piled on the corner of the desk, nearly a finger joint thick. In other words, in the hour and a half since he'd given Wu Tong these papers, while the rest of the class was still struggling with the provincial competition questions, she had already completed 6 more challenging national competition questions. This speed and the difference in difficulty shocked him once again. He didn't know what the prodigies in other provinces and cities were like, but this student, Wu Tong, had given him the ambition to compete in the national competition, perhaps even on the national team. At the bell, Duan Hong announced the end of time. When the papers were collected, only a few in the class had finished all 4 problems. In the past, he might have been furious with disappointment, but today, thanks to Wu Tong, Duan Hong rarely said anything. He collected the papers and dismissed them. Wu Tong's impact on the group who hadn't put up a good fight today was enough to sway them. Sun Zhao finally finished his agonizing thought. Although he'd solved the last problem, he felt like he might have been heading in the wrong direction. He turned back to Wu Tong and asked, "Big brother, how did you do the last problem?" Wu Tong paused as she put away her work. The title of Big Brother seemed a bit strange to her. However, Wu Tong wasn't one to dwell on things. She pulled out the sheet of paper she just picked up and said, "Here's my approach. Take a look, define the set A equals, where n is the set of positive integers. Since A is an infinite set, arrange the elements of A in ascending order to form an infinite sequence. Determine the relationship between n and m and k. Therefore, the condition is met, thank you." The big brother's guidance and the reasoning on the paper were crystal clear. If he still didn't understand, Sun Zhao felt he could just withdraw. Waving her hand, signaling Sun Zhao to leave without a word, Wu Tong packed her bag and left the teaching office. She wasn't particularly sociable, so her first action after class was to pack her bag and head home. With the problems teacher Duan had assigned her today, she could even skip the trip back to the classroom. The other students who were a bit slow and missed out on Wu Tong's chance to connect with her, the ones nearby, couldn't help but angrily slap Sun Zhao, who had the upper hand. "Old Sun, you're being so unkind to keep all the guidance from the master to yourself." It was this bastard who had wronged them. They wanted some guidance from the master, too. If it weren't for the prospect of another opportunity, they would have dragged this bastard off and thrashed him. Little did they know, Wu Tong had received special permission from Duan Hong to study the national competition questions at her own pace, without having to follow the large class schedule. The next few classes would primarily focus on discussing today's exam, and since Wu Tong had already passed with a perfect score, why waste her time? This student was a master of independent learning and self-discipline. She would gain more by letting her manage on her own. This meant Wu Tong didn't need to attend the upcoming 246 Math Olympiad classes. Wu Tong had witnessed the Olympiad problems being more difficult. Training in the Olympiad class didn't involve any specific thinking, it was all about solving problems. It wasn't until the exam that the group finally got a chance to meet Wu Tong, which nearly left them feeling disappointed. They were so angry that, after discovering on Thursday that Wu Tong didn't need to attend class, they settled the score with Sun Zhao. Wu Tong couldn't even know what happened next. Tong, here, Wu Jingzhong, who was waiting at the school gate, greeted his daughter with a beaming smile. He took the school bag from her and handed her a hot pancake. "Are you hungry? Eat up. It's freshly made, and I asked for extra crisps." Ever since Wu Tong started attending middle school night classes, Wu Jingzhong had personally come to pick her up whenever he was home, rain or shine. Their road was a main road, so it wasn't too dark, but Wu Jingzhong still worried about his daughter walking home alone after her evening classes. Smells so good, Comrade Wu. Thumbs up. I'm starving. She'd been working on difficult problems for 2.5 hours straight, her brain CPU spinning like crazy. The aroma of the pancake instantly whetted her appetite. Wu Tong brought the pancake to her lips and took a big bite. This was the taste. Teacher Jin hadn't given her much to eat from the stall, so Comrade Wu would occasionally quietly feed her when he picked her up. Comrade Wu rode his bike, and Wu Tong sat in the back seat, snuggling against her father's back. One hand held Comrade Wu's clothes to hold her in place, and the other hand ate the pancake. Nothing could be happier. Generally speaking, in a changing process, suppose there are two variables, x and y, the independent variable and the dependent variable, then it's a direct proportional function. After finishing a long chapter on functions, Wu Tong paused, tilted her head, and asked, "Brother, do you understand? These past few days, Wu Tong had divided her time between studying advanced math and doing exercises at school, and would visit Jin Zin's house at noon to give a lecture. He spent 2 days explaining the concepts of sets, subsets, unions, intersections, complements, and so on, logically and clearly. Once Jin Zin had mastered them, he moved on to functions." "I understand." Jin Zin's eyes lit up with sudden enlightenment. Previously, he hadn't understood the concepts, and after Wu Tong's explanation, he had filled in the gaps in his understanding. Now, a long chain of complete comprehension had formed, and Jin Zin felt it couldn't be clearer. His admiration for his sister flowed like the Yellow River. Tong handled all kinds of knowledge effortlessly, casually listing them with his pen, then meticulously deducing formulas, truly mastering mathematics. Whenever he stumbled, Tong would break down the concepts, whether explaining them forward or backward. At that moment, he felt his pen itching to transform into a 40-meter-long sword, slashing through the mountain of books and questions, solving every difficult problem. "Oh. Okay." Wu Tong did not discourage Jin Zin's enthusiasm. She raised her hand and took out a stack of papers that she had prepared in advance and handed it to Jin Zin. "Then try these, little brother." The little brother's current state is that he feels that he has mastered it all. After going through these papers that she carefully selected, and then going through the tempering of the senior high school entrance examination and small tests, all the water has been squeezed out, and he has truly mastered the high school set and function. The effect of her tutoring for the little brother will be reflected in the results of the senior high school monthly exam tomorrow, which will be released next week. Good luck on tomorrow's exam, little brother. Wu Tong stretched out her hand and made a fist, and bumped fists with Jin Zin like a brother, smiling encouragingly. "Give me 5, of course." Jin Zin nodded vigorously, otherwise it would be unfair to Tong for all her hard work. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.